What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories.
6 vs. Chapter 83 The Ghost Gate stands above the sky above Marineford. Advertise here. Dissuasion time and time again, eternal hell prisoners stood up one after another, and after all, Blackbeard completely dispelled the news of approaching the wooden house. Blackbeard led the prisoners who wanted to join the Blackbeard pirates and left in a hurry. He had to rush to Marineford to participate in the battle immediately. His ambition can not only be satisfied by recruiting these prisoners. With the departure of Blackbeard, the killing of eternal hell has not stopped. These legendary figures who have been erased from history are seen again, and the madness that was originally suppressed by the cage is released to the full. The unpleasant prisoners finally have the opportunity to meet, and they are fighting each other. The darkness was stained red with blood, it really seemed like hell here. At the same time, more and more prisoners have left the cage and gained freedom in the chaos. However, the wooden house is always quiet, turning a deaf ear to everything, as if isolated from the chaotic and bloody eternal hell. Letterfield walked on the ground covered with blood and bones. Every step he took was sticky and full of unpleasant blood, but he still maintained a gentleman's manner and came to the wooden house without delay. He was about to leave here. At the last moment, he raised his head and looked at the wooden house. Aren't you going to go out? No, it's very comfortable here. At this moment, the young and gentle voice sounded in the wooden house, which appeared very clear in the chaos. The direction of the door. The black who was about to get out of eternal hell heard this voice. So young. His pupils suddenly shrank, and his steps were just a short pause that was imperceptible. He didn't say much, and quickly left eternal hell. Letterfield nodded slightly. He took a deep look at the wooden house. The doors and windows were still closed, and the owner inside really didn't mean to come out. Withdraw his gaze. Letterfield took a step forward and disappeared at the end of the eternal hell. And as the lonely red left, the eternal hell gradually became quiet. The one who should go has gone, and the one who damn has died. There is only blood and bones all over the floor. Creak. Bullet waited until it was quiet. He opened the cage from the inside and walked out. Since he got close to Luo Wen, the cage has been unable to stop him. He went straight to Luo Wen's cage and looked at the wooden house in the small courtyard through the iron railings. Some people are gone, don't you plan to stop it? Bullet's voice was low and deep, echoing faintly in the now empty eternal hell. Creak. The door of the wooden house suddenly opened, and a tall figure in a suit walked out. The neighbor wants to move, why should I stop it? Having said that, Luo Wen smiled slightly. But what? Bullet asked. However, they will be back soon in the future. Luo Wen said, looking at the surrounding darkness. The cell did become empty, but some people remained, and not all the prisoners escaped. Blackbeard didn't let everyone go, but took a group of people away, and a group of people came out by himself. In fact, Blackbeard knew in his heart that there were some people who could not be used by him, let alone let go. He wants to dominate the world. Too many powerful people outside are not good for him. The group of people released now is enough to make the world chaotic. Hearing the words, Bullet narrowed his eyes and looked at Luo Wen for a long time. These people will come back. Bullet didn't understand Luo Wen's words. In eternal hell these years, he knew very well how terrifying his inmates were. Now that a large number of people have been released, the whole world will be disrupted. Marine and world politics will want to go again. It must be very difficult to get them all back. Even if Marine Marshal Sengoku is here today, he doesn't necessarily dare to say something that will definitely bring these prisoners back. At this time, Bullet's thoughts were interrupted, and he found Luo Wen's eyes were looking at him, and at the same time Luo Wen sounded with a faintly smiling voice. Aren't you leaving? Bullet shook his head. I want to stay and defeat you, and I promised you, didn't I? After speaking, he looked at Luo Wen, and the two of them met. It seems that you have something to do. After getting along with Luo Wen for so long, Bullet can be regarded as a part of Luo Wen's character. It is a strange thing that Luo Wen did not come out after such a big thing happened just now. Because Luo Wen's character just likes watching movies, it is a pity for him to miss that great show just now. But this is weird, because after the end of the good show, Luo Wen came out instead, which shows that Luo Wen might have something to do. I'm going out. Luo Wen didn't conceal, but nodded calmly. Bullet looked at Luo Wen and didn't say any extra words. He waved his hand like saying goodbye to his neighbor. Be careful on the road. With that, he turned around, stepped through the bloody ground, and returned to his cage. As Bullet himself said, he didn't plan to leave, he still stayed in the cage. For him, the goal now is to defeat Luo Wen. Bullet knows that although Luo Wen will go out, he will definitely come back here. What he has to do is continue to exercise during this time and then become stronger. Luo Wen looked at the back of Bullet leaving, shook his head and smiled. He has to say that Bullet is a crazy person, and he doesn't hate such a character. Hey, the goat seemed to notice that Luo Wen was about to leave, and walked up to rub his head against Luo Wen's trouser legs. Luo Wen rubbed the goat's head, took out a handful of grass and threw it into the goat's mouth. The goat chews contentedly, while Luo Wen faces the void and takes a step with a smile. In front of him, a dark, gloomy, ghostly portal appeared. This moment, the prisoners on the 6th floor who were still in the cage noticed this scene, all their pupils shrank and their expressions changed obviously. Luo Wen has to act. The other side, Marineford. Boom. The bombardment of artillery fire has not stopped for a moment since the war officially started. The skyrocketing smoke makes the scalp numb, blood has become commonplace, and the sea frozen by Kuzan is now cracked, and blood has penetrated into the sea along the cracks. Let this gradually turn into blood. And in such chaos, a figure remained standing still, even if someone died in front of him, there was no response. It is the old man who smokes. Why hasn't this old man reacted yet? Are you really afraid of stray bullets exploding on him? Someone browse. This old smoking man is too strange. Porcelino Admiral has shot. Suddenly, someone screamed, causing people to shift their eyes from the old smoker. Oh my god, the person who fought Porcelino Admiral burns with blue flames all over, and can fly to the sky. That's the Phoenix Marco, Whitebeard. The strongest second in command in the pirates except Whitebeard. As expected to be a phoenix, Porcelino Admiral's golden light penetrated his body, but it seemed that nothing happened, and the wound healed quickly. Many people marveled. This ability is very powerful, Eudemon species are very rare, and every Eudemon species has special abilities, and perhaps the most famous one is the Phoenix Marco. Just as people were engrossed, staring at the scene of Porcelino and Marco fighting on the broadcast screen, another surprising thing made everyone's eyes have to look at the old smoking man. I'm kidding, Porcelino, Admiral and Marco have both beaten the old smoking man over the head, and he still has no reaction at all. Porcelino Admiral's golden light rubbed his body. If he hadn't been smoking a cigarette all the time, I would doubt if he was a dead person. Many people were dumbfounded and their eyelids jumped wildly. They found that this old smoking man was really addicted to smoking. He just sat and smoked, looking funny. What? Suddenly someone shouted, and the surprised voice attracted everyone's attention. Luffy. Luffy of the Straw Hat Pirates. I saw a teenager wearing a straw hat appearing on the screen, rushing into the execution platform at the center of the battlefield. Ace, I'm here to save you. Luffy was yelling, and many people heard the voice. Save Ace. What does he have to do with Ace? He actually wants to go to Marineford at this time. Someone was surprised, but his attention was quickly drawn away because the old smoking man who had not moved all the time stood up. The old man who smokes doesn't smoke anymore, he stands up. The reporter who has been recording the old smoking man widened his eyes and screamed at this scene. Many people have found a different place. While the old smoking man stood up, another person came out from the cabin of the Whitebeard pirates. He had a big belly, holding a wine barrel in his arms and did not let go. His body was black and transparent, and looked very similar to the appearance of the old smoking man. There is a feeling that seems to be fantasy but really exists. Laugh. At the same time, ghostly female laughter resounded through most of the battlefield. In a dark corner of China, surrounded by black aura, pale and terrifying Sadako appeared. For flowers. In the other direction, the slit female model wearing a mask walked out, and the coat couldn't cover her curve. At the same time, Hachisha-sama, the clown, Hanako, the ghosts that landed on the island appeared one by one. They walked out of the darkness in all directions, gloomy but attracting everyone's attention. That's the Rip Girl. The Rip Girl went to Marineford. Someone at Sabayati Archipelago recognized the slit woman at a glance and screamed in horror. The legend of the slit woman has been spread throughout this period. The gaping girl can think of the recent haunted rumors in an instant. At this moment, many people in Sabayati Archipelago who know the legend of the Rift Woman looked at the yin figure that appeared with the Rift Woman, and an incredible idea emerged in their mind: they would not be two. A very frightening word appeared in everyone's mind. Now, with the appearance of these ghosts, the expression of an individual in the battlefield has changed. Little girl in red. Doflamingo's eyelids jumped wildly. In response to the call of the world politics, he did not continue to deal with the haunting of Dressrosa, but he never expected that he would see this familiar ghost again here. In an instant, he wanted to shoot and kill the little red girl ghost on the spot, but the next second he thought of something and his action stopped abruptly. It's not me who is having a headache right now. Shao 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 shao. Doflamingo looked at Sengoku standing high on the execution platform. This is Marine's base camp. The person who has a headache and has to solve it is Marine Marshal Sengoku. Point 0. It's a ghost that appeared in our place. The Lai family can't read it wrong. At the same time, Hancock turned his head to look at Xiao Junzi, a pair of azure blue eyes flashing faint light. She had dealt with Xiao Junzi once, and it was very dangerous that time, and almost got hit. Hey hee interesting, is that a ghost? What's the difference with the zombie I made? Moria smiled strangely, watching the ghosts appearing with interest. The ghost in the rumor can't be touched with the blade, is it really the case? Mizk squinted his eyes, his amber eyes were like the eyes of an eagle, very sharp, he was eager to try, his palm lightly touched the black knife blade. Damn, clown ghost, he's here again. Buggy, who was torn apart with fruit power, widened his eyes, and almost drew his head into his crotch. On the other side of the battlefield, Jinbei looked at several female ghosts that suddenly appeared, especially Xiao Junzi, and he recognized it at a glance. It's her. Jinbei took a deep breath. This is the little girl ghost next to Luo Wen. When people are thinking about whether this is a ghost, he is thinking about the meaning behind these female ghosts. Luo Wen. This man, is he going to intervene in this battle? Thinking of this, Jinbei suddenly turned his head, looked at Whitebeard, and shouted, "Daddy, want?" Boom. Before Jinbei finished speaking, the sky over Marineford suddenly changed. Everyone could clearly feel that the sky was darkening, even those who watched the live broadcast at Sabayati Archipelago saw it. Rumble. There seemed to be a heavy muffled thunder exploding in the sky, and the dimness of the original clear sky news, the sky and the ground seemed to be stained with a layer of black, and they all became dim and dull together. Gosh, that is. Under the horrified gaze of everyone. The sky is cracking. A gloomy portal full of unknown aura stands horizontally on the top of the sky. Its appearance seems to have suppressed the sky, and the sunlight is dimmed because of this, and the clouds are stained with ink, full of ghostly gloomy air. This is a weird portal that makes people subconsciously want to look away. Just looking at it seems to make the soul fall and be sucked into the deep Uzumaki. This moment, looking at the hundreds of thousands of people in Marineford, a subconscious thought appeared in their minds at the same time. If this door is opened, something extremely terrifying will happen. This is very weird. There are so many people present, but at the same time I hope that this door will not open. However, no one's thoughts can interfere with a folding fan door. It really opens a little bit. As a result, the world cools down, and the cold makes the soul tremble. Next moment, the scalp of many people in the audience exploded, and they only felt that the coolness was climbing a little bit on their backs. There are footsteps in the gloomy portal full of uncertainty. Chapter 84 I bring the era of ghosts. Advertise here. Da. The footsteps of you doctor sounded from the ghost gate, resounding through the top of the sky, spreading across the sky and the ground. As the footsteps sounded, the ghost gate became more and more condensed, and the 3 steps in front of the door were clearly visible, as if they had become entities, and within the slightly open portal, the darkness was endless, and the dark ghost gas continued to emerge, spreading between the heavens and the earth, and the white clouds there all dyed black. Who is it? Many people were terrified, and a heart was lifted up. This door looked wrong, and now there are footsteps ringing from it. This scene was very strange. The enthusiastic Marineford seemed to be poured with cold water. The fighting stopped unanimously, staring blankly at the ghost gate in the sky. Da. The footsteps became clearer and clearer, and in the dark abyss, a tall and straight figure strode out, breaking through the encircling ghostly spirit, and standing in front of everyone. He has bright eyes, black hair flying, and wisps of ghost energy entwined around him. He can't tell whether it is from himself or the ghost energy contained in the ghost gate, but it has long been blended together. At this moment, the ghosts of Marineford all looked at the man who walked out of the ghost gate. Luo Wen. Sengoku looked at the overly young man in the sky. His pupils suddenly shrank. The next moment he shouted, Luo Wen, the man behind the haunting of the world, appeared. Everyone pays attention to any of his actions. At this moment, Sengoku's voice sounded and spread throughout Marineford. Many people at Marine Senior looked over. They recognized Luo Wen. If it is someone else, they might not know Luo Wen, but they are too familiar with Luo Wen's information. 810. Have seen it countless times. He is the one behind the haunted world. Hancock's pupils shrank slightly, and the news about Nine Snake Island was blocked, and there was very little news available, but Granny Zaw still used some newspapers to infer that these haunted people were behind them. Now she saw the man who made the world haunted with her own eyes. Everything is caused by you. Doflamingo's eyes under Doflamingo's sunglasses stared at Luo Wen. His hidden eyes were fierce, and the changes in King's Heights were caused by this man named Luo Wen. If there is a chance, he will definitely kill Luo Wen the first time. Shank's boat was crashed. Did he push it behind his back? Mahawk looked at Luo Wen who walked out of the ghost gate. He felt a dangerous breath from Luo Wen. At the same time, Shanks and him had a phone worm 2 days ago. Speaking of the ghost ship, it reminded him all of a sudden. He knows the strength of Shanks and Red Hair pirates very well, and a ghost under Luo Wen can cause Shanks to sink a ship. There is no doubt that Luo Wen himself is extremely dangerous. Mahawk turned his eyes and searched on the battlefield, but this disappointed him and failed to find the ghost ship. And Sengoku's words swayed across the world at the same time. Countless people are in an uproar because of this. What? Haunted. Haunted is not a natural phenomenon, but has something to do with this young man. Just kidding, how can people have connections with ghosts? Sabayati Archipelago has exploded. Many people have wide-eyed. Listening to Sengoku's words, they are unwilling to believe it. This is incredible. In the eyes of ordinary people, the haunting has long become a rumored existence in the sea. In their eyes this is a natural phenomenon, how can someone control it? It's him. At the same time, in a corner of Sabayati Archipelago, Bonnie watched the ghost door open a little bit. The moment Luo Wen walked out, his face changed significantly. This is Luo Wen. Luo Wen in bullet. In the battlefield. Oh yeah, he is here. Pelusolino put on an exaggerated wretched smile, but there was a trace of solemnity in his eyes under the sunglasses, although he did not have direct contact with Luo Wen, but there was a short time when he was fighting Bullet. The collision, but it was enough to impress him. At this moment, Whitebeard looked at it, as did the members of the Whitebeard pirates. Father, don't fight with Luo Wen, you can't fight with him. Ace on the execution stage struggled to raise his head, but he shouted something like this. At the same time, the interrupted Jinbei also eagerly said, "Father, that is Luo Wen, he is the one who leads the haunting." Jinbei is too aware of Luo Wen's weirdness, and even knows that there was a big movement outside the prison during the time he was detained, and all of this was done by this man who was detained on the 6th floor, but did not look like a prisoner. Jinbei observed more closely. He found that Luffy and Dad's first expressions when they saw Luo Wen were puzzled, which meant that they didn't seem to know Luo Wen. This made Jinbei roar directly, with the same anxiety as Ace in his words. At this moment, the words of Ace and Jinbei were heard by the Whitebeard pirates, including Whitebeard. They subconsciously looked at Ace and Jinbei, and then at Luo Wen, which made their pupils suddenly shrink. Because under their gaze, the man named Luo Wen completely walked out of the ghost gate and took 3 steps. He stood quietly on the next step of the group, his deep eyes looked down below, without any movement, but naturally attracted all eyes. Behind him, a group of ghosts probed from the slightly open portal, dancing around their sides. The ghosts were heavier than the black clouds, so that the sunlight here was covered and unable to shine. What is this ability? Can someone's devil fruit achieve this level? Too many people were astonished, and their gazes at Luo Wen were full of weirdness. This ability, Blackbeard's eyelids are jumping. At first glance, his dark fruit and this kind of ghost are similar in visual effects, but in fact they are very different. Luo Wen is in the sky and he is on the ground. The distance between them is at least a few hundred meters apart, but despite this, Blackbeard can still feel the biting chill. The ghosts poking their heads out of the ghost gate, looking at the world, are full of ominous feelings, as if waiting for Luo Wen's order to sink the world. Too many people on the battlefield are paying attention to Luo Wen. It is obvious that he just walked out so calmly, but it gave people an incomparable sense of oppression. Those Marines who heard Sengoku's prompts had fine sweat in their hands holding weapons. Flowing. Is this the one you don't let me approach? Luffy raised his head and turned his eyes to Luo Wen in an instant. What he felt from it was not like a person, more like a ghost watching him, this kind of look he once saw the dead silence of the little girl in white in the forest of Nine Snake Island. Yes, he is Luo Wen, an absolutely dangerous person. Be careful of him. Ivankov reminded him of his danger level. He paused briefly when he said this, and looked at Whitebeard. Whitebeard, now known as the strongest man in the world, is even more terrifying. You know, 4 emperors Whitebeard didn't manage to mess around with celestial dragons, move out of the Holy Land, or even kill a 5 elders. Luo Wen stood on the top of the sky, and a group of ghosts hovered around him. Yuan Zi exuded a cold breath, and a cloudy wind blew between the sky and the earth, blowing his black robe. His gaze swept across Marineford below. Marineford has seen blood, and many people died as corpses, buried here forever. After the death of Roger, the era of great voyages has come, and now I am here to start a new era. The execution of Ace, the son of One Piece, is a turning point. At this moment, the gentle male voice resounded between heaven and earth, and too many people raised their heads to look at the figure standing in front of the ghost gate. Luo Wen overlooks the world, and his voice echoes faintly, the era of ghosts. The moment the sound fell. Boom. The ghost gate suspended in the air opened, and those spring ghosts rushed out like a wave. Endless ghosts occupied the sky, sweeping in all directions. At the same time, the ghosts everywhere on the battlefield also moved. Ha 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 ha. The clown tilted his head and smiled very strangely. The corners of his mouth were grinning to the back of his ears. He shook the knife in the handshake and walked towards a Marine Vice Admiral. There was no sound at all in his footsteps, even when he was about to approach Vice Admiral. Reaction. However, halfway through, a white shadow fell from the sky, and a cold CP0 appeared. He stared at the clown in a cold tone. Don't worry about other people, kill this clown. The words were audible, and there were white figures all over the battlefield, slaying towards the clown with an icy killing. These CP0s have thunder in their hearts, and they want to kill the clown grid here to smooth out the hatred of 5 elders. Ha 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 ha. The clown is still laughing. There is no extra action, even if CP0 is in front of him, and even the encirclement has been formed, but he still has not stopped his previous actions, holding a knife in his hand, and continues to move forward step by step. Boom. On the other side, Dasadako walked to a pirate who had just killed a Marine Rear Admiral. She opened her hand and twisted the space under her 5 fingers. One place. The slit girl moved at the same time, and the scissors were like flying butterflies in her hands, and the corpses fell under her feet, becoming a long trip of flesh and blood. Not only them, but the other ghosts are all in action, harvesting lives with cruel and bloody methods. Group flurry. This terrible picture, through the broadcast screen, let everyone in Sabayati Archipelago see it. Ghosts are all ghosts. Someone saw this scene with a numb scalp, and stepped back. This is terrible. Ghosts that only appeared on the news now appear in front of everyone. This kind of vision, the irritation on the body makes people stand upside down and get goosebumps. Wow. The child was sobbing and burying his head in his mother's arms, not daring to watch this kind of scene. So strong. Bonnie's pupils shrank. At that moment, she saw a man in a white cloak. He was very powerful. His eyes gave people a feeling of glowing, but he was filled with a gloomy smile. The clown was killed in an instant, his head was cut off and tied to the end of the balloon. At the same time, in the middle of the battlefield, above the execution platform, Sengoku stood on a high place and saw all this, and his face had obviously changed. This battle is changing towards unpredictable changes, which makes Sengoku's heart sink. His eyes subconsciously look at Luo Wen, and then at the ghost gate opened behind Luo Wen. And in this chaotic battlefield, Whitebeard is still trying to rescue Ace. All of this gave Sengoku a hunch that things seemed to be out of control. Execution. Sengoku suddenly changed his mind and gave a decisive order. He saw too many ghosts, and now he can no longer continue to delay. Luo Wen walked out of the door and brought terrible changes to this world, like opening a Pandora's box and releasing a gloomy group regulation. Now the whole Marineford is shrouded by ghosts, the air has become damp and cold, the earth is decayed, and the weird moss and frost have formed, and it is full of unknowns. Sengoku can't let Marine stay in this place anymore. No one knows what it will look like afterwards. Same time. Whitebeard noticed this, he saw the executioner raise the naginata to cut off Ace's head. Obviously there is no time for execution, but now he has to do it, indicating that Sengoku has changed his plan. Whitebeard knew that this was because Luo Wen came, and almost instantly fell the battlefield and became a 4.5 purgatory full of ghosts. This method is too frightening, not to mention that no one on the scene knows what he wants to do. Sengoku had to make a change, he saw that Sengoku's face turned ugly at that moment. Boom. Whitebeard exploded. The four emperors, who has the name of the world's strongest man, vibrated extremely terrible fluctuations in his body, so that the air was splashed with ripples, the earth trembled crazily, and the entire Marineford was tilting, and the billowing waves came from the sea. Pounced out and rushed towards the inner land. The power of horror instantly affected the entire battlefield. At this moment, countless people made their moves, all of them were erupting, and they wanted to rescue Ace before the naginata fell down. Same time, many people are paying attention to the changes in the sky. Luo Wen has already sat down on the third step. Behind him is an open portal. There are countless ghosts around him. His eyes are very deep, watching all this silently, and it does not help. Whitebeard's intention, and no intention to stop Whitebeard. Boom. Taking advantage of the gap where Whitebeard's ability exploded, Marco flew out as a flame bird and suddenly came to the middle of the battlefield, but was shot down instantly, and Pelusolino intercepted him. At the same time, Luffy on the other side was also punched off the execution platform. Where is Sakazuki standing? It is impossible to be crossed like a big mountain. Ace looked at Luffy who fell to the ground. The next moment he raised his head and looked at Whitebeard in the distance. Father, I'm sorry, I am not a competent son. He shouted at this moment. I'm going to die. Luo Wen looked at all of this with calm eyes. Chapter 85 Blackbeard. With shock fruit, you can compete with Luo Wen for the world. Advertise here. I'm going to die. Luo Wen sat on the steps, with one hand propped up on his knees, and he quietly looked at Ace shouting on the execution platform below. He knew that the naginata was about to fall, and no one could save Ace. Because of his appearance, the entire execution process has undergone some changes, and Ace was not even able to be rescued from the execution stage by Luffy. Ace's cries resounded throughout Marineford. Seeing this scene, the corners of the eyes of countless people in the Whitebeard pirate group were wet and tears were shed. At this moment, the bright naginata was lifted, reflecting a dazzling light in the sunlight. The knife fell, blood spilled. The whole world was shaken and stopped. It's dead, the Buddha screams. Doflamingo grinned, and laughter came out of his mouth. Even though the entire Whitebeard pirate group arrived, the ending remained unchanged. Hancock's eyes dimmed. She helped Luffy a lot this time during the robbery, but the scarlet blood still splashed in and out, and couldn't stop it. Ace. Luffy stayed there, standing still without moving. Sengoku looked at Ace who had already been executed and his head fell. He sighed in relief. No accident happened. At this moment, he raised his head and looked at Luo Wen in the sky. Fortunately, this man did not interfere and allowed Ace to be executed. In this way, Marine's purpose had been achieved. Whitebeard looked at this scene, like a silent volcano. The terrifying force was shaking. There was no movement, but the surroundings were shaking at the same time. The earth cracked and the air screamed. He raised his head in silence, looked at Ace who was already dead, and bit two words between his teeth. Evacuate. These two words, with endless pain, resounded throughout Marineford. Daddy, are we leaving like this? Many people in the Whitebeard Pirates group have red eyes. They have seen Ace die with their own eyes. Are they going to leave in such a dingy manner now? Many people's tears and blood are mixed, and they are not willing to accept failure like this. Listen to Daddy. Withdraw. Marco suddenly said as the captain. His voice was a bit hoarse, but it was audible to everyone, and there was an indisputable command in his tone. There is no need to add more casualties. Marco said this sentence calmly, leaving everyone behind. No one saw that his lips had been bitten and bleeding. Silence is death. The Whitebeard pirates fell silent all at once. No one said 26 words. The evacuation began. No one who is in a good state of being seriously injured pulls up the injured companion, and walks fast and heavy to leave here. As Marco said to continue, it will only cause casualties. However, only two people did not evacuate. They are Whitebeard and Marco. The two were silent. There is only one action. Take a step forward and walk towards the execution platform. The earthquake ripples erupted as Whitebeard's footsteps stomped, and the surrounding marine swayed from side to side. Marco was surrounded by blue flames, and when he fell step by step, the blue flames remained on the ground and burned. Their purpose is only one: to bring back Ace's body. Children, take advantage of this time to retreat. Whitebeard's body is very stalwart. It stands behind all the members of the Whitebeard pirate group. It is to recapture Ace's body and amputate his own children. Let's withdraw too. Sengoku stood on the execution platform, overlooking Whitebeard and Marco, who rushed towards this side, and ordered calmly. He didn't let everyone continue to chase, but instead let everyone evacuate. The appearance of Luo Wen made this a paradise for ghosts. There are more and more gloomy things, so that the surrounding environment changes. Extremely horrible. In fact, according to the original plan, after Ace was executed, he should pursue and leave Whitebeard here. But now he looked at Luo Wen, who was watching a play in the sky, and he couldn't understand why Luo Wen appeared here to prevent Ace from being executed. Not so, Ace is already dead. At the same time, Sengoku can also be sure that Luo Wen is definitely not watching a play. His previous sentence reverberates through the sky, and his words to usher in the era of ghosts in this world seem to be echoing in his ears. The most sensible choice now is to evacuate. This scene was broadcast to all parts of the world through the phone worm. The Whitebeard pirates have failed. Someone was crying, looking very painful. The Naginata had fallen, and the blood had splashed. This battle is doomed to end in the defeat of the Whitebeard pirates. It's good to die. Pirates are sinful. What they commit is going to hell. Some people resented and jumped at the same time. They wanted the pirates to die, especially the most terrifying pirate group like the Four Emperors group, even the most terrifying pirate group. I wish the entire group of Whitebeard pirates were destroyed in Marineford. They can sleep well only if they see Ace, the son of the devil, die. Emotions are erupting. Everyone has different thoughts in their minds, but they all know one thing: the Whitebeard pirates' action failed. However, at this moment, Sabayati Archipelago's first line of people staring at the broadcast screen suddenly shouted, looking very surprised. What's the matter? Marine and Whitebeard pirates have both evacuated. In the picture, the crying pirate held back the rolling tears and ran towards the port without looking back. And strange things appeared. Not only did Marine not chase the past, but he also retreated. What's the situation? Shouldn't it be pursued at this time? Someone was stunned and did not understand why this happened. Whitebeard failed to evacuate. Shouldn't Marine stop it? Instead, they evacuated with the Whitebeard pirates. According to normal thinking, Marine should organize them to leave no matter what, capture and leave the Whitebeard pirates. You know, they have gone to Naval Headquarters. Wait, I seem to understand the reason. Someone was stunned, then his eyes glowed and looked at Luo Wen in the sky. At first they didn't think of this reason, but after seeing the actions of Marine and Whitebeard pirates, they understood. This is afraid of the man standing in front of the black portal in the sky. Sengoku called the haunted scene of the world, the most dangerous and terrifying man. Now, everyone held their breath and watched the pictures on the broadcast screen. In the battlefield, face Sengoku's evacuation order. I will not leave. Sakazuki was persistent and stubborn. The pirates of sin are right in front of them. I can't let them go like this. This is a discrediting of justice. Sakazuki snorted coldly, with a firm expression, thick smoke rolling over his body, and the burnt ghost came out of him, and the howl was extremely miserable. Boom. He leapt up, blocked in front of Marco, and fists entwined with magma burst out, like a meteor shower falling. Marco squinted his eyes slightly, waved his flame wings and moved in the air. The burning magma rolled up, but was quickly cut off by the blue flame, and the two abilities were sawing. Sakazuki, don't be arrogant. Crane rushed out, trying to stop Sakazuki. At this time Marineford had something wrong. She raised her head and looked at Luo Wen, who was sitting on the steps of Gamangwan. Luo Wen still did not move at this moment, but even so, it can still affect everyone's mind, and pay attention to what Luo Wen is going to do next. Everyone retreat. Sengoku ordered again. He looked at Sakazuki, who rushed out, his brows, his eyes looked at Luo Wen again, his heartstrings tightened, and he was afraid that Luo Wen would take action at this time and Sakazuki would have an accident. However, Sakazuki turned a deaf ear to these voices. Justice can't be desecrated. Sakazuki roared, and the magma erupted violently, knocking Marco away in front of him. The magma was devouring the flames of the phoenix, which made Marco's injury unable to recover quickly. Next moment, Sakazuki's body turned in the air, and the magma scorching hot enough to burn out the steel rushed out, whizzing through the air and bombarding Whitebeard. The air passing by was twisted, and the water was evaporated. Whitebeard's eyes condensed, his right fist raised, and he punched the oncoming magma. Taste. In front of his fist, the space cracked into cobweb-like cracks, and the force of the vibration suddenly hit the magma, swallowing it up. But in the next second, Whitebeard's eyes widened. He felt a sharp pain in his chest. A sharp sword pierced in from the back and came out through the front. Whitebeard looked back in a daze, with a splash of blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. Behind him, Skeward stabbed his back and pierced his chest. At this moment, everyone's pupils shrank violently, and they didn't expect that a traitor would appear in the Whitebeard pirates, and the betrayal hurt Whitebeard. I didn't think this scene would happen anymore. Luo Wen sat on the steps and raised his eyes when he saw this scene. He followed the original trajectory. Before the war broke out, Whitebeard was about to be stabbed by the filial piety sword. NS. At that time, Luo Wen found that this situation did not happen, and thought that Sakazuki, who was possessed by ghost, had no time to make a plot. However, he did not expect that the filial sun sword appeared, but the time was delayed. Father. Marco's eyes widened. There was a blue flame rising from his body, waving his flame wings to the sky, trying to get to Whitebeard. Sakazuki saw this scene, his eyes flickered, and his foreshadowing had already started. Although it was later than the original plan, it was not too late. Boom. The ground under his feet cracked, the flames melted through the ground, and the bottom of the pit became a magma-like substance, and his body suddenly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he had already come to Whitebeard. Marco rushed, but before he arrived, he was blocked by the spray of magma halfway through, and couldn't move forward half an inch. In the curtain of magma, Sakazuki raised his fist and smashed it at Whitebeard's head. Taste one by one. Whitebeard, who has been pierced through his chest, looks like a tiger in the twilight, but at this moment still raised his fist firmly, shattering the space and breaking the magma when he threw it again. Sakazuki's heart was shocked. At this moment, he felt that what he was facing was not like a fist, but more like a tsunami coming from the face. Boom. He slapped his heels, and the entire ground was broken. The surging shock wave hit him, his body moved backwards, and his legs made a long scratch. Sakazuki slammed back with a punch. Whitebeard looked at Scudard behind him. At this moment, Scudard burst into tears. He looked at the bloody chest of the old man, regretting at this moment, and the hand holding the knife was shaking in his face. Squad knelt down, wrapped his tearful face in confession, and said everything. On the eve of the battle, Sakazuki found him and told him that this battle was a joint effort between the Whitebeard pirates and Marine, and it was a trap. On the surface, the Whitebeard pirates came to rescue Ace. In fact, Whitebeard has reached an agreement with Marine to use all the Whitebeard's large ship group pirates that New World followed as a bargaining chip in exchange for Marine not to take action against the Whitebeard pirates after the death of Whitebeard. Let them continue to be active on the sea. Scudard knew that his father's body was not as good as one day, and he really didn't have much time to survive. If one day his father became ill and became blind, the Whitebeard pirates would definitely be besieged by Marine. Therefore, he believed it was a scene and stabbed Whitebeard in the back. But he regretted it the moment he did it. On my boat, no matter how stupid it is also my child. However, in the face of the betrayed Scudard, Whitebeard opened his arms and embraced him. This scene shocked many people. Whitebeard did not attack the betrayers, but chose to forgive again and let Scudard leave the battlefield quickly. At the same time, Sakazuki walked away, twisted his shoulders, and made a bone-crackling sound. His eyes were firm, he wanted to kill Whitebeard here. But soon, Sakazuki found something wrong. A group of people appeared on the battlefield surrounded by ghosts, others were evacuating and they were rushing in. And their goal is very clear, which is to go straight to the injured Whitebeard. Shichibukai Blackbeard teach. Sakazuki narrowed his eyes, and he saw the people following Blackbeard, even wearing prison uniforms. Sakazuki recognized these people at a glance. They were erased from history, they were imprisoned in the eternal hell, and some were even sent in by Sakazuki himself. And now, the criminals in the prison are out. Sakazuki's heart is shaken. At the same time, Teach and others have rushed in front of Whitebeard. Luo Wen. The voice of Ninetails Fox Butterfly Beauty sounded. She rushed towards Whitebeard, but she looked at the protagonist, and there was a shout in her mouth. Luo Wen, our purpose of coming here is Whitebeard. Kill him and we will leave here. See before it's the inmates' affection that don't stop us. She yelled, with alertness and prudence in her expression, as if she was worried that Luo Wen would destroy their plan. Hee hee hop. Suddenly at this moment, there was a dull laughter from the back of Marineford's central office building, and a huge figure as tall as the building appeared. The huge battleship Wicked Wolf has arrived at the battlefield at some point. Luo Wen, we don't mean to be an enemy of you. He bit his fingers, tilted his head and looked at Luo Wen, explaining aloud. His mind is simple, or there is something wrong with his brain, and he can't hide his emotions. At this time, his eyes, which are as huge as a lantern, are full of jealous emotions, and he seems to be very afraid of Luo Wen. Blackbeard rushed up and looked at Luo Wen in the sky subconsciously. Before he was still wondering who the man in the wooden house was, but now the other person walked out, above the sky 813, turning Marineford into a ghost domain. Before coming, Blackbeard told the crew that his purpose is to kill Whitebeard here, eat Whitebeard's shock fruit, and become a unique dual demon fruit power in the world. But when he came, picking the distant sea, Blackbeard saw the appearance of Marineford clearly, and the whole person was stunned. The criminals who came out of the prison were equally stunned. They couldn't believe it. It was Marineford. It was just a ghost soaring into the sky, ghosts screaming everywhere, rushing in Marineford like a tsunami, recklessly acting. It is not like the Marineford in the impression. I have been imprisoned for so many years. Is the headquarters like this? At that time, Dai Mei whispered this sentence. But in the next second, she vaguely saw a familiar figure, Luo Wen. At that moment, Dai understood everything, and the culprit who changed Marineford's appearance was Luo Wen. My god, damn it, the whole Marineford is a ghost. Badgers felt his scalp explode, and there were dense ghosts everywhere, and it felt gloomy and creepy from a long distance. Lousy finally knows a little bit why Five Elders is afraid of that little white face. Van Oka was numb and his hairs were standing up. This is too exaggerated. He hasn't read the news about ghosts on weekdays, but he still does it like this. I haven't seen it. An entire island is full of ghosts, and Naval Headquarters has become a ghost den. Hehehehe, it's really an interesting world. The evil wolf looked like a child and was very excited to watch this scene. Blackbeard listened to the words of his crew, but his heart was hairy. Marineford has changed. No, he only visited it not long ago. At that time, Marineford was normal, definitely not what it is now. He just went to Impel down, and Marineford became a ghost den after he came out. This moment, Blackbeard thought that when he came to Impel down, Daimei and others told him about Luo Wen. It is said that when he was in prison, a Five Elders went to Eternal Hell in person for Luo Wen. However, it turned out that Luo Wen still didn't give a good face, and not long after that, the world politics let Bullet attack Luo Wen. As a result, Luo Wen defeated Bullet unscathed. Blackbeard looked at Luo Wen from a distance. The other party looks very young, with white skin and soft facial features. It looks like a very gentle white face, but the horror hidden under this appearance is enough to overturn the sea. Blackbeard finally understood that this is why the prisoners in the prison would be afraid of Luo Wen and told him not to approach the small courtyard of the wooden house. Luo Wen's character is incomprehensible to them, a perverse and weird, not sure what to do. It is not impossible to be killed when he gets close to the wooden house. Thinking of this, Blackbeard's mentality fluctuates. Luo Wen is absolutely terrifying. The man who made Naval Headquarters into a ghost domain with one hand, even Sengoku can't do anything about it. Next moment, he condensed all his thoughts and looked at Whitebeard. Father. Blackbeard grinned and appeared with an ambitious smile. As long as he has the fruits of his father, he believes that he has the ability to compete with Luo Wen and compete with Luo Wen for the world. Kill Whitebeard. Blackbeard's crew is yelling. Daddy, I'm sorry you. Blackbeard smiled weirdly and rushed towards Whitebeard. Chapter 86. He is announcing his arrival to the world, officially on the stage of this era. Advertise here. Father, I'm sorry for you. Blackbeard's weird laughter resounded over Marineford. A group of ghosts entangled, like a thick black fog, and in it, you can vaguely see a few figures like electric lights, and the news comes in front of Whitebeard. Whitebeard's stalwart body moved suddenly. Raising his right arm, hitting the air with his elbow, the space cracked in an instant, and the cobweb crack spread. Rumble. Marineford seemed to be in a major earthquake. The ground and the air were shaking and trembling, and even the distant sea was dragged and rolled up like a tsunami. The members of the Blackbeard pirate group who rushed were swept backwards in the face of such a shock. Teach. Whitebeard kept his elbows raised, a pair of old eyes looked at Blackbeard, and there was a shocking light in the depths of the eyes. He is like an old fierce tiger, even though he is late, he still screams in the forest, exuding a courage to everyone. Boom. Kong Yunchi drew a perfect arc in the air, and slashed Blackbeard's head with a mighty force. Whitebeard is angry and wants to kill Blackbeard here. He does not allow Thicizan, who killed his brothers and feed on his boat to continue to live in this world. Daddy, do you know the power of dark fruit? Blackbeard grinned weirdly, and the moment he rushed up, there was a surging of black gas between his hands raised, that was a precursor to dark fruit's activation. Boom. Blackbeard abruptly caught the knife, the expression on his face was obviously distorted, it seemed to be painful, but he was not injured. Huh. Whitebeard frowned. He used shock fruit's power with this knife. The power cannot be underestimated, even if it smashes half an island. Dark fruit. Just as Whitebeard was about to think about it, his expression suddenly changed, and his eyes suddenly changed. Blackbeard was about to brag about his ability to kill the fruits of his fellow shipmates. Suddenly, he noticed the change in Whitebeard's expression, which made him stunned for a while. Whitebeard doesn't seem to be looking at himself. Blackbeard faintly noticed something. At this moment, he even had a thought in his heart, that is, no longer confronting Whitebeard, but turned his head to see what is the picture that can make Whitebeard fascinated. At this time, Whitebeard was really not watching Teach, which was a taboo in battle, but in fact, what was happening before Whitebeard made him have to do it like this. Luo Wen who opened the ghost gate. Just now, there was action. A group of ghosts hovered around him, descending from the sky to the earth, exactly at the location of the execution platform. Now, many of the people present changed their expressions, and there is no doubt that they all looked at the position of the execution platform. The ghost flickered, terrifying. Luo Wen's toes fluttered to the ground, really like a ghost, falling on the execution platform, and his footsteps quietly walked towards Ace. Now, Ace is dead. The head was chopped off by the executed Naginata, and it rolled to the side. There were scars of red blood on the ground. He moved. Everyone's complexion changed, especially Sengoku's complexion was even more ugly. He wanted to leave this place as soon as possible to avoid extraneous branches. However, Luo Wen is still acting now. Sengoku doesn't know what Luo Wen is going to do, but he always feels uneasy in his heart, or that his vigilance towards Luo Wen is already full. As long as he has a relationship with Luo Wen, he will feel uneasy. Luo Wen, what are you going to do? Jinbei was yelling. He saw this scene with a stunned and horrified expression. This former inmate took action and stood beside Ace. At the same time, Sabayati Archipelago, in front of the broadcast screen. A person gathered here, in this short moment, as if their whole body was electrocuted, their eyes widened, and they were shocked. No, no, Ace's body moved. This is haunted, it happened in front of all of us, haunted in broad daylight. Everyone was horrified and looked at the picture on the screen in disbelief. I saw Luo Wen, standing next to Ace's corpse, raised his palm and stroked Ace's corpse in the air. At this moment, people all over the world can clearly see Ace's body, and their fingers are actually moving. Immediately afterwards, in front of everyone, Ace's fallen corpse sat up again, and the transparent ghost appeared a little bit in his body, the gloomy and frightening. What? The ghost of Ace was crying, and even if he became a ghost, he still kept the behavior he had before his death. Seeing this scene, everyone was sluggish. Ghost. It's really a ghost. The resentment after death, turned into a ghost, appeared in front of everyone, and they all witnessed this scene. This is the first time in the world, the whole process of being turned into a ghost after death has been witnessed by the world. Even Marine Marshal Sengoku, his eyes widened when he saw this scene. Ghost. The impact of this scene is too great. He has always known that there are ghosts, but knowing that Gui knows, he has not been completely sure whether it is a ghost in the true sense. To know, there are too many weird devil fruit abilities in the world, which can change age, spit out flames, and even turn people into animals. They do beating, it must be haunting, and there must be ghosts, but in the true sense, whether a person becomes a person after death has always been a question mark. No one has any evidence to prove this. Including Luo Wen once told the story of Sadako, and later Sengoku also asked Sengoku to investigate Sadako in the story, but there is no news about Sadako in reality. The only relevant evidence is that celestial dragons in the Holy Land turned into ghosts after death, but Sengoku has not seen this personally. Therefore, there is always a trace of doubt in his subconscious. But now, Sengoku saw it with his own eyes. Not only did he see it, Garp also saw it, and Whitebeard saw it. Everyone in the world, anyone who was watching this war, saw it. After Ace died, the ghost turned into a ghost appeared in front of everyone. The beheaded Ace is now a ghost. Hey, this is a joke, this is not a concept at all with my shadow fruit. Moria's eyelids jumped wildly, he can manipulate dead bodies and turn them into zombies, but the method like Luo Wen is nothing but heaven. Differently. That red girl ghost, did it appear like this? Doflamingo's face was ugly, and witnessing the ghost appearing with his own eyes made him even more frightened. To some extent, this is really an ability that everyone wants to have. Mahawk looked cold, and a dead person was resurrected. Who in the world has such a method? This means that death is no longer the end. It is expected that someone will take the initiative to find Luo Wen when he is about to die, and let Luo Wen turn himself into a ghost. At the same time, Mahawk also thought of the ghost of rocks that made a lot of noise some time ago, just as Luo Wen said, let the world become the era of ghosts. Will those who died in the future have to see the sun again one by one? At the same time, the ghost of Ace on the high platform came back to his senses. The subconscious crying stopped, looking at Luo Wen standing next to him. At this moment, the ghost of Ace was obviously startled. For some reason he looked at Luo Wen with an inexplicable intimacy. Ace remembered that he was dead. How can you see Luo Wen at this time? I'm going to hell together, right? Ace didn't think too much. The next moment he noticed his body. He didn't know when it had become transparent. The sun shined through his body, and there was no shadow left. Then, Ace saw his corpse, his head rolled aside. He raised his head dully and looked at the battlefield in the distance. The battlefield at this time seemed to give him a very warm atmosphere, and all these actually came from that ghost. Suddenly, Ace felt that he looked at these ghosts as if he saw brothers and sisters, and Luo Wen felt even more weird to him. He actually had a feeling of seeing his father. You are dead, suddenly. At this time, a calm voice sounded and Luo Wen told this fact indifferently. Ace raised his head blankly, and met Luo Wen's eyes. I'm dead. He was startled slightly, but soon thought of something, I have become a ghost. Is it you? Ace looked at Luo Wen and couldn't believe it. Luo Wen, you turned me into a ghost. Guess. Luo Wen just said these two words with a smile. Ace is very familiar with these two words. He often heard it before when he was in eternal hell. Luo Wen once said this to Sengoku and Magellan. I guess so, Ace whispered. He raised his hand and looked at the translucent palm, with an inexplicable look in his eyes flashing. Become a ghost. But there is no feeling of discomfort, and I can still perceive the world, and even have an illusion, as if it is more relaxed. Ace is you. In the distance, Marco saw this scene and shouted in surprise. His eyes widened as if he was not awake, and there was excitement flashing in his eyes. Can Luo Wenboy call souls? Ivankov hugged Luffy, who was so sad that Ace died and fainted. His nose slipped out of excitement. This moment, Ivankov thought of many things. Luo Wen has the ability to bring people back from death to life. If they can join the Zhe Liao army, can their fellows who have died become ghosts and come back again and devote themselves to the cause of revolution again? It's me. Facing a pair of eyes, Ace definitely said this sentence, officially declaring that he had become a ghost and came alive. Heard this sentence. No one can be calm. There is an uproar all over the world, all kinds of sounds are resounding in the sky, and almost the entire island is overturned. This is amazing. It's just a legend that once resurrected from the dead, even if there are similar rumors such as the ultimate meaning of op fruit, it is only a rumors in the end, and no one has seen a real example. But the resurrection from the dead appeared before everyone's eyes. Is the age of ghosts really coming? Death is no longer the end. Even Garp was shocked by this, dumbfounded. Ace has become a ghost. He widened his eyes and stared at Luo Wen, who was standing next to Ace. At the moment Ace was executed, Garp had a lot to say, but in the end he couldn't say anything. It was a matter of course that a pirate was caught and executed, not to mention that it was Roger's son. But Ace is not only Roger's son, but also his grandson. When the execution was successful, Garp closed his eyes and he could feel his heart twitching. But it hasn't waited for the sadness to spread. Ace came to life under Luo Wen's hands. Garp opened his mouth as if he was about to dislocate. Is this a successful execution or a failure? Even if the crane had evacuated for a certain distance in the distance, he turned his head at this moment and looked at Ace, who had been resurrected as a ghost with good money. To say that the execution was successful, it was indeed a success. But Ace is alive again. If it is a failure, Ace is no longer the original Ace, but a ghost. This is too difficult to say clearly. But there is no doubt. Luo Wen's method shakes the whole world, and no one can calm down. At this moment, those who are watching the war from all over the world even stand up in unison, agitated and uproar. Ding. Sengoku is scared, surprise point +10. Open black lens bracket ding. Whitebeard is frightened, startle point +10 close black lens bracket. Ding. Blackbeard is scared, scared point +10. Open black lens bracket ding. 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 The system prompt sound is directly maxed out at this moment. The entire page is scared and pouring out, at the most terrifying speed in history. Be scared, it's so scary. More than 1,000 at a time, thousands of additional points, tens of thousands of points arrived in the blink of an eye, and even a very easy breakthrough. I can't imagine how many frightening points can be after the end of the screen. Luo Wen quietly looked at the startled point of the screen. Turning his eyes slightly, he looked at Sengoku in the distance. This moment, the eyes of the two were exactly in line. Sengoku was also watching him top. At this moment, Sengoku was shocked, and even briefly felt as if Luo Wen's arrogance was overwhelmed by Luo Wen. What is he going to do? Next to him, Branu asked tremblingly. The eyes under Sengoku's glasses flickered. He looked at Luo Wen. There was a low, hoarse murmur from his mouth. He is announcing his arrival to the world, officially on the stage of this era. Chapter 87 Doflamingo, Die. Advertise here. He is announcing his arrival, officially on the stage of this era. The sea surged violently and hit the rocks. The black-clothed and black-haired young man stood in front of him. Behind him was the dark ghost gate, like an emperor walking out of hell, in charge of the ghost realm, and the ghosts surrendered. Luo Wen looked away from Sengoku calmly. Scan everyone in front of you. Marineford was already a sea of blood and sea water mixed into blood water, flowing across the blue brick ground. Ahem. Whitebeard's huge old body fell heavily to the ground, his white beard dyed with scarlet blood. The wound pierced in the chest was bottomless, and the vitality quickly passed by. His eyes fell on the ghost of Ace, who had come back from the dead, but it was a deep surprise. Blackbeard stood there, his eyes widened. He can come back from the dead, what a terrible ability. What is the meaning of death in front of such a person? Rise from the dead, give orders to 10,000 ghosts. Dai Mei held her arms and was detained at the bottom of the seabed prison. The most vicious female prisoner in history confronted Luo Wen for the first time, and she felt a little bit of cold. The man who manipulates evil spirits is more frightening than evil spirits. Pelusolino touched his chin, the yellow lens covering his eyes. Sakazuki had a sullen face, and in the flames behind him, the little devil opened his teeth and danced his claws to grab Kuzan's curls, but in the next second he was frozen into ice, emitting cold white smoke. Kuzan had his hands in his pockets, his black face was dignified and tight, and there was a sound of creaking and freezing all over his body. Collect their expressions one by one. Luo Wen smiled lightly. Raised his hand with a wave. The ghost gate suddenly opened wide, and the torrent of dark ghost air rushed straight into the dome. The sky suddenly became gloomy. The ghosts seemed to have received a pardon from the Emperor, and the ghosts howled heavily on their chests like thunder. There was a heavy blanket over Marineford. The ghost army crushes the realm. The ghost is like a ferocious beast, tearing its eardrums by howling. Many people covered their ears, showing pain on their faces. Scarlet blood had disappeared from someone's ears, and it slammed on the ground. Luo Wen is condescending, with black clothes added to his body, cold and noble like an emperor. As long as he orders, these ghost army will consume and tear everyone here. Everyone's complexion changed. The ghostly aura, like a cage woven by the evil ghost 813, the shadow enveloped the sky over Marineford. Marco's face changed drastically. He is driving us. The joy of Ace's resurrection was diminished. He looked up at the black-haired young man, and read the deportation message from him. Luo Wen is telling them to leave Marineford. Other people also noticed the same, and their faces changed slightly. Marco solemnly looked at the black-clothed figure high above him, and ice-blue flames suddenly appeared from his fingertips. If you want to go, you have to take Ace. He didn't recognize Luo Wen, but he knew it was a ghost he controlled. The smokers and drunks who appeared out of thin air on the Whitebeard ship, and the ghost ship mentioned by the red hair, were all made by the youth in front of them. That is a ghost that can overturn the ship of the 4 emperors and trap the 4 emperors with red hair in the sea. How many people can do it in this sea? Ace is by his side, too dangerous. Marco and Ace looked at each other, and Ace's ghost shook his head at him. Hurry up. Marco read his hint. Ace stood behind Luo Wen, staring at the slender figure in front of him. Luo Wen is a very dangerous man. As soon as the ghost gate was opened, did Marshal Marine, who is known as the Buddha Sengoku, change his face. Marine has been preparing for this massive execution for a long time. They beheaded the son of the pirate king Roger in public to deter the world and promote the power of Marine. But Luo Wen's appearance changed everything, controlling Marineford, and resurrecting his ghost in front of Marine. Luo Wen, it is too scary. Ace had an absurd idea in his mind, let alone the Whitebeard pirates. Even if the 4 emperors unite, they may not be able to get some benefits in Luo Wen's hands. For some reason, after he was resurrected as a ghost, he always had feelings of admiration and respect for Luo Wen. Luo Wen will not hurt himself, he is sure. Therefore, when he noticed Marco's attempt to save himself, his first reaction was to refuse. Ace. A low, calm voice came from behind, and Ace realized that the youth in control of Marineford was calling himself. He turned his head and faced a pair of calm and deep black eyes. Do you want to go with them? Luo Wen's gaze stayed on Ace for a moment, then passed him, and landed on Marco, who was helping Whitebeard not far away. Marco was saying something to Whitebeard. Whitebeard coughed heavily and looked at Ace with his old eyes, loving and reluctant. Daddy. Ace's eyes were hot. He has the Whitebeard Pirates pattern on his back, which is the most important honor in his life. The magnitude of Marineford's execution of the son of one pirate means how dangerous it is. But the old man came here without hesitation. He turned his face away. I don't want Marco to offend Luo Wen, who is more terrifying than Marine, in order to save him. More importantly, he sees Luo Wen very kindly, and he is willing to stay with him. Luo Wen raised his eyebrows. You can leave if you want. Why? Ace was stunned. A faint smile appeared on the face of the young man in black. I turned you into a ghost. Do you think I want you to repay? Repay? Ace looked at Luo Wen. He was surrounded by black mist. There were many ghosts and a clown with a red nose. He looked funny, but he was able to take the life of Marine Vice Admiral while playing. The black-haired female ghost with long hair wrapped around her neck easily twisted the neck of a heinous pirate. The ghosts are powerful enough to sweep everything, and they are absolutely loyal to Luo Wen. I thank you for letting me live in another way. You didn't want me to repay you, but I personally want to repay you. Ace said seriously. Luo Wen does not need his gratitude, but he is grateful for the rebirth he has given. Luo Wen glanced at him. Then I will leave you one thing. You said, I will try my best to finish. Keep up with your father, walk around the world when you have time, and brighten yourself. The corner of the young man's mouth rose slightly. Huh. Ace was taken aback, staring into Luo Wen's eyes. That's it. This one. Luo Wen turned his back to him. He has no plans to leave Impel down at the moment. It is better to let Ace follow the Whitebeard regiment to continue to make a name for himself at sea. Of course, it is the name of Yang Gui. He thought, and said lightly, if you don't leave, then stay here and be a ghost, I don't mind. Ace was taken aback. Confirming that Luo Wen is really willing to let himself go, he happily responded, okay. He paused and said, thank you. When he turned his head and ran towards the Whitebeard pirates, the people behind him spoke again. Wait. Ace's joy sank. Did Luo Wen regret it so soon? He turned around and saw Luo Wen staring at the corpse under his feet. His face was blood-stained, and he couldn't see the person anymore. Would you not take your body away? Or should I burn you for you? Ace was silent and took a deep breath. Please take care of it for me. The ghost burst out, towards the direction of the Whitebeard pirates. Cross the battlefield at a speed that is difficult to see with the naked eye. Without Mera Fruit's ability, but the physical skills were still there, Sombra jumped into the Whitebeard pirate group instantly. Luo Wen retracted his gaze. He looked up, and the seawater melted down from the sky and wet his black hair. Marine is retreating in an orderly manner, and this sleepless execution is drawing to a close. Blackbeard watched Luo Wen's every move, CGEF, suspiciously. Suddenly, the black-haired young man seemed to feel something and turned his head and glanced at him. Suddenly meeting the dark black eyes of the doctor, Blackbeard's heart beat violently. I don't want the pirate group that I just got on board. It didn't take long to get to know the captain before he died. What Diome said in prison came to mind. Marine retreats, leaving only the angry Whitebeard pirates. This time he broke into Impel down, and he got what he wanted. Without Marine's entanglement, he would not dare to bear the anger of his father and the Whitebeard pirates alone. Blackbeard gritted his teeth and gave the retreat command without hesitation. Go. The people in the black group are in the same prison with Luo Wen, knowing his horror better than Blackbeard, and they have no objection. The black group also retreated. Go. Retreat quickly. The executioners and the robbers were gone, and the others couldn't wait to escape this purgatory surrounded by ghosts. Luo Wen watched them retreating indifferently, suddenly raised his head and looked in one direction. On the edge of Marineford, a group of pirates was rushing towards the ship. The most eye-catching part of the team was a figure in a pink feather coat. He maintained a retreating posture, but his eyes were always on the little girl in red who was giggling and twisting her head on the battlefield. There was an undisguised cold-killing intent in his eyes. Luo Wen stood on the execution stage, rubbing his fingers. He stared at Doflamingo, his smile deepened and he spit out a few words. Go, kill him. The voice was as soft as a whisper. The command sounded in the ears of the ghosts at the same time, and each ghost accepted the edict from the Coon King at this moment. The clown chopped an arm into 3 sections, and the blood stained the mouth of the blood basin. He was even more horrified, and walked towards the edge of Marineford with a grin. Sadako's thin fingertips caught the person who kept swallowing long hair in front of him, threw away the body, and disappeared in place. The girl in red chuckled, jumping in the same direction. With an order, Wangui surrendered. Ghosts are like tides of maggots, converging from all directions. The pirates watched the ghost passing by, moving in the same direction. There is. When Doflamingo reacted, it was too late. He glanced over the black figure on the execution platform, couldn't see the opponent's face, only felt the coldness of goosebumps all over his body. The ghost is like a wall, besieging him. The road that can be walked is getting narrower and narrower. The ghostly spirit was cold, his skin began to glow as gray, as if he had stepped into a dense mountain forest, surrounded by the hanging forest lion majesty, spitting apricots. He looked at the ghost wall that was besieging himself impenetrable, his face changed in vain. With a flick of his finger, countless transparent threads gush out. Bullet string. Raise the index finger and put away the other fingers, so that the thin thread made from the fingertips is fired at high speed like a gun. Its destructive power is strong enough to penetrate human bones with one blow, and even the opponent can easily hit the target from a distance. The silk thread is as fast as a bullet, and it takes the clown's gray neck. The clown had a mouthful of blood and seemed to laugh at Doflamingo's useless struggle. He didn't avoid it, the silk thread passed directly through his body, and then also penetrated the ghosts behind him. Did not cause any harm. Doflamingo's pupils shrank suddenly and lowered his head. He clearly saw that a small white hand was inserted into his body, and blood was splashed on the pink coat. The wind howled. Hand in hand, pat the ball, the girl in red hummed nursery rhymes, and slowly squeezed a beating heart out of his chest. Bang, bang, bang 1. The juice from the explosion of the scarlet organ stained the white and tender little hands. The torn purple sunglasses slammed on the ground, and the last reflection in the lens was Doflamingo's horrified and unbelievable look. 3 seconds. From a living person to a corpse, in just 3 seconds. The ghost once again evacuated like a dark tide. The icy smell of blood remained in the air, leaving only a corpse and a crumpled heart pouring juice, and horror filled everyone's heart. Doflamingo controls more than 50% of the underground world's arms. King of Dressrosa. Die. Sabayati Archipelago. The lively outdoor bar balcony is silent at the moment. Everyone stared at the broadcast screen in front of him, unbelievable. Marine collided with the Whitebeard pirate group, and the execution of Ace, the son of the One Piece King, all proceeded as Marine expected. Until the young man in black named Luo Wen appeared. He has black clothes and black hair, handsome eyebrows and gentle eyebrows. When he stood on the execution platform, facing the camera, he said the words that could change the world. I want to start the era of ghosts. No one questioned Luo Wen's words. The ghost door closed behind him and opened wide, and the monstrous ghost spirit forcefully penetrated between the pirate and Marine. Snapped. Kid stared at the screen, unaware that the cup in his hand was crushed. He saw with his own eyes that the funny clown, taking off a CP0 arm for amusement, sprayed thick plasma on his red nose. Had it not been for Pelusolino's kick to attract attention and rescue the Vice Admiral, he would have been dismembered on the spot. Kid's face twisted slightly. Fear, horror, and deep madness flashed in the pupils. Snapped. The screen turned black. Why is it suddenly dark? What happened? The audience was awakened in vain, only to realize that they were watching the broadcast, maintaining the same posture, and had not moved for a long time. Chapter 88 Grievous Blackbeard. Advertise here. Transpiration in the ghost domain. The dome is piled up with thick clouds, ghosts enveloping the sky over Marineford, and it looks like a huge forest prison from a distance. The sound of breaking waves came from the end of the sea level. The pirate's bow is carved with fierce and cruel red dragon flow pattern, is sailing to Marineford. The second hand was smoking a cigarette, and the smoke ring floated on the face of the monkey behind him. The monkey scratched his master's ear with a grin. The grass swayed leisurely. He stretched out an index finger and propped up the brim of his hat. At this moment, the pirate boats broke through the marine defense line and fled to sea level. The pirates had expressions of horror, and their faces were full of, help, there are ghosts. They panicked and fled in all directions. They passed by the bow of the Chalong boat, and the black energy entangled endlessly behind them, as if a ghost was chasing them. It's a pirate under the Whitebeard pirate group. Lackey gnawed off the last piece of meat from the chicken leg. Shanks flicked the brim of his hat, and the hat flipped in the air and landed on his head, revealing a pair of eagle-like eyes that were covered. He looked at the ghostly shadows above Marineford. Beckman bit the cigarette. Are we going to stop it? Shanks did not answer immediately. The dignity of the fundus of the eyes disappeared little by little. A smile slowly appeared on his face, and he couldn't tell whether it was anticipation or taboo. Someone did it for you. We didn't expect it to happen. Let's leave, it's over. Shanks took a deep look at Marineford. Beckman squinted and followed his line of sight to the towering Naval Headquarters. Marineford has become a ghost land. Shanks took off his straw hat and put it back on his face. The eyes under the hat did not close, staring at the top of the hat. Haunted, ghosts after death rocks, female ghosts with mouths cut open, ghost ships, all kinds of ghosts. The era of ghosts. There was a low and inaudible whisper from the mouth of the four emperors. Shalong's bow turned around and gradually disappeared on the sea level when it came. The azure blue water ran into the sky. This sea area, located on the back of Marineford, coincides with the sea area where Shanks sailed. In the sea, there is a strange, huge battleship wandering. The criminals squatted on the battleship, arguing loudly. Wine, I want wine. Hurry up to the island with wine. Hiccup. Go to the island with beautiful clothes first. I've had enough of this damn prison uniform. Blackbeard sat behind them without speaking. His face was so gloomy that it dripped water. Damn it. Blackbeard suddenly slammed his punch. The battleship trembled violently. The sudden shock caused everyone to stop arguing. Everyone looked at him together. Blackbeard took a deep breath. The plan was defeated. He planned for a long time, planning to defeat the old man in this top war. Capture shock fruit. If it's not those damn. If not for them. Now he has obtained shock fruit, which is known as the strongest in the world. He even defeated the old man and took the seat of the new four emperors. Who the hell is Luo Wen? Blackbeard's eyes were yin-yang. He saw Luo Wen's ghost punching Marine under his hands, stepping on CP0, and offering a reward of only 30 million. He doesn't believe it. He is very strong. There is nothing wrong with being careful. We are not daring to confront him at the moment. Choke poured wine on the wound and took a big mouthful with his head up. I know. Blackbeard said in a deep voice. The more he thought about it, the more angry he got. Finally seized an opportunity, the old man was seriously injured. Just one step away, you can get the shock fruit he dreams of. Now, everything has to start all over again. I have to face the terrible anger of the Whitebeard pirates. Boom. Blackbeard was so angry that he punched again. It hurts. The hull shook violently, and the battleship wailed under him. Blackbeard almost forgot. The ship was smashed by the evil wolf. The battleship they are currently riding on is the huge body of the evil wolf. This Luo Wen is unlucky as soon as he meets him. Blackbeard blames Luo Wen for his anger. Luo Wen is now his biggest obstacle in the path of One Piece. Go faster. Don't let the Whitebeard group catch up. Blackbeard urged. Thinking of the sturdy combat power of those lunatics, he didn't want to run into them. ... For flowers. He. The light laughter floated from a distance. Blackbeard was startled. Where does the laughter come from? He turned his head abruptly, and there was nothing behind him except the waves rising from the sea. Is it an illusion? Suddenly it feels so cold. Dai Mei rubbed her arms. A fish is biting me. The evil wolf murmured. The temperature on the ship dropped dozens of degrees without warning, and at the same time, laughter appeared in their ears again. The laughter sounded again. This time, it was like sticking to my ears, as if I could feel the cold wind blowing in my ears. Blackbeard suddenly had a bad feeling. He lowered his head. A head slowly came out of the sea, and on his lifeless face, he drew a mouthful of blood that was grinning to the base of his ears. Then it climbed up. At the same time, the Whitebeard pirates withdrew the Moby Dick. The sun went down. The golden light pierced the ghostly black sinking cage, and the wine was on the broken teeth of the whale's bow. Cough. Whitebeard coughed hard. The wound has been simply treated and bandaged and no longer bleeds. He shakes his cloak, walks to the bow of the whale, and strokes the dilapidated wood. Moby Dick. Old. Standing at the end of the line, Ace was stung in his eyes by this scene. He remembered that when he first came to the Whitebeard regiment, he wanted to assassinate the old man. He couldn't even touch him in his dream. Seeing that the old man's back is not as straight as before, and there are more gray hairs between his temples. He insisted on going his own way to catch Teach, but he didn't want to drag his father to lead the Whitebeard pirate group's 16 pirate groups and forcefully break into Naval Headquarters to save him. Ace blames himself. Daddy, I'm sorry. If it wasn't him, the old man wouldn't get hurt. Ace, it's not your fault. Whitebeard looked at him lovingly. Teach broke the rules and must be punished. I underestimated Teach. The reason why family members are called family members is because they need to use their lives to protect them. Whitebeard was startled. Do ghosts shed tears too? The resurrected boy knelt in front of his father in the tall building, crying like a child. 100 million. Chapter 89 Pelusalino, is it your turn as expected? Advertise here. Joes wiped his eyes, and Beasta turned his back. Bramank took a sip of the wine and said why the wine is so good today. The saliva flowed out of his eyes. Marco looked at the family with a helpless smile. Father, how do you feel about your health now? Ace felt a little embarrassed, rubbed his face indiscriminately, and looked worriedly at the wound on his chest. The gauze bandage just now was soaked in blood again, which shows that Teach is merciless. Whitebeard waved his hand. No one knows my body better than me. Ace, you are a ghost now, how does it feel different from before? Bai Tuan knew that his father did not want to talk about his body. Although they were worried, they didn't force it, so they followed Dad's gaze and looked at Ace. Ace thought for a moment, and honestly said, August 27, it doesn't feel any different. He didn't feel the difference anyway. I heard that people can't touch ghosts. Joe's was eager to try, reaching out to pat his shoulder. Sure enough, the hand passed straight through. He was surprised at first, hit his head with a fist, and went through again. Sure enough, it's hard to see. Let me try too. Only a sound of breaking through the air was heard. Beasta pierced the air with a sword, whistling straight into Ace's brows. Ding! One finger from the center of the brow, the tip of the sword was firmly pinched by two fingers. Ace tilted his head, and the quiet sword light illuminates his eyes. Beasta was surprised, and the others exclaimed in admiration. People can't touch ghosts, but ghosts can touch people. With that said, how do you feel that you are stronger than before, Ace? Ace, is your fruit power really gone? Joe's was curious. Ace shook his head. He tried, and Devil Fruit's ability disappeared. That he is indeed dead. Unbelievable, Marco murmured. He looked at Ace, except that he couldn't touch and had no fruiting ability, he couldn't see any difference from before. The Moby Dick sailed slowly into the sea. Whitebeard drank and watched the captain's shuttle between the cabins, sorting out the damage from the battle. Suddenly, his eyes fell on the empty bow, frowning. Where is the ghost here? At the bow deck. The ghost who has been squatting and penetrating smoking has disappeared at some point. Is it to stay with Luo Wen? Marco thought for a while. Speaking of which, when I entered Naval Headquarters, I saw the old man who smoked, as if he was going to a marine in Naval Headquarters. The situation was critical at the time, and he just gave it a quick glance. Is it helping us? Whitebeard brows deeper. The ghost has been on the boat for many days and has been smoking, without hurting them, and has not said anything. How can he suddenly go to marine? He could not think of anything other than helping to stop it. No. Marco shook his head. He's going to grab the cigarette from that marine's hand. Worthy of smoke. Whitebeard grunted, not paying attention. It was a ghost that appeared suddenly, and since it didn't hurt anyone, he didn't have to care about it. As for the alcoholic who appeared with it, they also disappeared without a trace, and seemed to have left together. The golden crow fell under the sea, and the bright moon was high in the sky. The dark and vast sea reflected the lighthouse in moonlight, and a huge shadow slowly approached, crushing a pool of clear waves. Marine warship. Crunch. The sound of shoes rubbing against the floor came from behind. A pair of army boots stopped behind Sengoku. Martial Marine, wearing a marine coat, didn't look back. Are all withdrawn? Garp said. The last one just went to the infirmary. After he finished speaking, he walked to the seat next to Sengoku and sat down, stretched out his hand and ate the martial senbei without hesitation. It's scented. Sengoku's forehead picked up the blue veins. He turned around and looked at Garp, who was lying lazily in his seat holding senbei and gnawing happily. Garp was accustomed to his sight, and it didn't affect his appetite in the slightest. Sengoku stared at him for a long time, but he didn't see what he meant to save himself. Shinjin jumped and jumped. Save me some, you old fellow. Garp changed directions and pointed his butt at him. The atmosphere is gradually dangerous. You are all here. At this moment, a voice came from outside the door. Crane pushed the door in, and the marine coat draped over her shoulders moved in the wind with her movements. Sengoku's face was solemn, and Garp swallowed the senbei and stood up solemnly. Meeting table. Bright incandescent wine is on the round table. Crane put his hands on his chin and heard Sengoku's order. Count the number of people and count the losses. Yes. Branu left the meeting room. Sengoku's eyes were dark. Marineford has fallen into a ghost land, and is no longer suitable for living. This means that Naval Headquarters will also move away. Leave aside the haunting, we won. Crane's calm voice sounded in the conference room. The son of One Piece Roger was executed, and Marine's goal had been achieved. Whitebeard, known as the world's strongest man, was seriously injured, which was an unexpected joy. But the atmosphere in the meeting room was heavy. Sengoku didn't look up, staring at the round table in front of him. Victory. If it is not haunted, it can barely be considered. But the haunting can't be thrown away. This time the execution failed, I can't help but answer. After the incident is over, I will resign. The meeting room was silent. Both Crane and Garp remained silent. They understand that someone needs to take responsibility for this failure. The moon is as cool as water. 4.5 There was a rush of footsteps outside the door again, and Branu, who was in charge of the report, rushed in, looking panicked. Marshal, there is a ghost. Someone has followed the boat. Sengoku frowned when he saw him panicking. He heard the word ghost, his face changed slightly, and a person appeared in his mind. Boom. At this time, the door of the meeting room opened. Porcelino opened the door and walked in, and found that everyone's eyes were on him, and he couldn't help but look down at him. No problem wearing it. Why stare at him as if there is a ghost on his face? Terrible. Poor Sarino, is it your turn as expected? You. Marshal Sengoku got up and hesitated to look behind him. Is there a ghost behind you? Chapter 90 10 consecutive draws, the ghosts are out of the cage. Advertise here. Poor Salino Admiral is finally entangled by ghosts too. Poor Salino. I was so frightened. He subconsciously turned his head and glanced behind him. There seemed to be countless invisible ghosts floating in the cold and dark corridor with their mouths wide open. Branu explained. No, it's not Pelusalino Admiral, it's Smoker Vice Admiral. Smoker. The warship in the middle of Smoker has been quarantined, and Momosugi Vice Admiral is in charge. Branu reports. Sengoku nodded. Suddenly, his eyes fell on Pelusalino again, and he asked with concern. You really are not possessed by a ghost. When the voice fell, Sakazuki and Kuzan who came one after another also cast their eyes on Pelusalino at the same time, as if to stare at him out of a hole. Pelusalino. Poor Salino's eyebrows flicked and smiled. I'm sorry, but I don't have anything at all. It's fine if you don't. Sengoku's lenses flashed, and his tone seemed a little bit regretful. Garp got up and watched the lively legs retracted back into the chair. Sakazuki and Kuzan glanced at each other disgustingly, then turned their heads tacitly and walked in completely opposite directions. Pelusalino stood there with a distorted smile. Luo Wen stood on the high execution platform, looking down at the haunting Marineford. The Naval Headquarters has been occupied by ghosts. The execution grounds, offices, and streets were all full of hordes of ghosts. Some of them wandered in the air, some curiously grasped the surrounding things to check, some lurked under the water and spit bubbles, or appeared out of thin air. 26 If someone passes by, they will mistakenly think that they have entered the hell of evil spirits. In addition, Gamengwan came to the ground, corroded and melted the ground, spreading a pitch-black mercury-like crack. The crack spread to his feet, and the summer stopped. Strange. Luo Wen bent down and walked into an ordinary small house under the gaze of the ghost. He picked up the oil drum, threw it at a corpse, and then threw a flame. Ace's body. When the faint flame met the gasoline, it burst into a skyrocketing fire dragon, and quickly licked the corpse clean. Luo Wen raised his hand and wiped the ashes before his eyes. In a real sense, Ace has completely died. After doing all this, Luo Wen did not let his ashes float to the sea, but put it away in a small biscuit box found by Xiao Junzi. When doing all this, Luo Wen moves very gracefully and does not rush. What is he doing? A faint sound came from the remote and empty alley, and the ghost shuttled on the street outside the alley, and no ghost glanced at it. After a while, another heartache sounded. It's actually burned like this, that's the corpse of the son of One Piece. Such a waste. Suddenly, two figures appeared out of thin air behind the door. Absalom was released from invisibility and pulled Moria to hide in a dilapidated house. They originally wanted to steal the corpse in a mess, but the sudden haunting dispelled his thoughts, and then they were chased by CP0 and robot bears, and then they went into hiding. Hey, that guy is not only the son of One Piece, but also the captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Regiment. Moria was heartbroken. The pain caused Ishin's chest wound, and her face instantly paled. He originally came here to collect the corpses. The reason why he was hunted down did not retreat immediately because he wanted to stay and see what was missing. What is better than the corpse of the son of One Piece? Suddenly, Moria's body tightened. An eagle falcon's sharp gaze shot straight at him from the high execution platform, locked tightly as if staring at a prey, making him creepy. Moria met those eyes. The calm and deep black eyes are as deep as an ancient well. The young man with black hair and dark eyes seemed to have insight into everything. He looked at each other with a smile on his face. Master Moria, he found us. Absalom was nervous. As soon as he finished speaking, he only heard the person next to him simply say, go. Moria gave up instantly. Go. Absalom's eyes widened in surprise. He just said that he would take a few corpses back, why did it change so quickly? And how did he feel that Moria-sama's body seemed to be shaking? Dead body. The corpse is a hammer. Moria was pale, he had no doubt that he would turn into a corpse any longer, and hand in hand with the group of ghosts. A man who can turn Naval Headquarters into a ghost land, would he be afraid of Shichibukai established by Marine? Fortunately, Luo Wen didn't intend to kill them, and allowed Absalom to take Moria and sneak under his nose. For Ace's corpse, Luo Wen watched the two hurriedly slip away, smiling at the corners of their mouths, really not interested in killing them. Right now, he has more important things. Luo Wen retracted his gaze and ordered all ghosts in transition. The ghosts are listening. From now on, don't let anyone step into this island. He wants to make Marineford a real ghost land. Luo Wen's deep and majestic voice rang in the ears of every ghost. The ghosts raised their heads one by one, facing Luo Wen's direction, with black spirit flowing in their eyes, and bowing their heads to listen to orders. They were absolutely loyal and surrendered. The ghostly shadow of Marineford, the black fog became more and more terrifying, and the vast sky shrouded in the sky, like a hell on the sea floating outside the world. Luo Wen left the execution platform full of blood, turned over, jumped into the position of marshal where Sengoku was before, and took a deep breath. Well, the air is very fresh. He sat down casually in the marshal's chair, looked at the void in front of him, and meditated. System. A light blue light curtain popped up, showing the shock value of today's harvest. Scare point, the numbers are growing wildly. 149,776, 149,908. The numbers are still getting bigger. Ding. Momosugi is scared, scared point plus 10. Ding. Smoker is scared, scared point plus 10. Open black lens bracket ding. Dense. More points than every time before. Marine pirates have them all, and they are all in batches. The shock point exceeded 150,000. Sure enough, it depends on the number of people. Luo Wen sighed happily. He glanced across the panel. He had long expected that the top war would be able to brush a lot. He is very satisfied with the result. Do not hesitate to enter the mall and start buying what you want. Open black lens bracket ding. Exchange for cheap ghosts plus 100. Close black lens bracket. Ding. Exchange for cheap ghost plus 100. Ding. 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 Luo Wen directly pressed the upper limit of purchase and clicked what he wanted. The sound in my ears is all the notification sounds of successful purchase. Spending money is like this, that's what it means. After buying the ghost, I went to buy the capsule again. After buying it all the way, my fingers were sore. Purchasing information continued to swipe the screen, and the battle power climbed all the way, and finally stopped at 2 billion. Let's celebrate with 10 consecutive draws. Luo Wen stroked his chin. He closed the purchase page in front of him and clicked on a cursor next to it. Lottery. What ghosts can Shillian draw? I hope it can be interesting. Luo Wen's quiet, water-like eyes raised seldom expectations, and he clicked on the 10 consecutive lottery. Ding. Consume 300 scare points to draw ghosts. Ding. Consume 300 scare points to draw ghosts. Ding. 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 A beautiful reminder sounded in my ears. Ding. Successfully draw the ghost. Annabelle. Annabelle. Ghost doll. An antique doll appeared in Luo Wen's mind. Annabelle was originally a soulless doll. She was given as a gift, but was implanted with a spirit body by an evil organization and became a ghost doll. She is usually an exquisite and cute doll, but at night she becomes a vicious ghost doll. The appearance of ghost dolls will always be accompanied by endless horror and blood. Ding. Succeeded in extracting the ghost. Crying woman, Warona. Immediately afterwards, the second tone sounded. Luo Wen whispered. Worry Luo na. Sorona drowned her own child, and then went to kill other children, which can be called a child killer. Unlike other ghosts, she is always out of sight. By the pool, in the bathroom, even quietly appearing behind you. Ding. Successfully drawn the ghost, Saki Toshio. Ding. Successfully drawn ghost, Ghost Bride. Ding. Succeeded in extracting the ghost, Long and Thin Ghost. Ding. 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 Hungry ghost, knocking ghost, hanging ghost, pressing ghost. Luo Wen scanned the newly drawn ghost before her eyes. 843 10 consecutive draws are happy, and this draw is very rewarding. He knows the first 9 ghosts, some come from ghost movies, and some come from stories. They have their own strengths and strong abilities. But, what the hell is this ghost newspaper in the end? Ghost newspaper office. A never-ending newspaper office can decide at will that the newspaper will appear in people's homes, and when they get a newspaper, they will be called by ghosts, and the ghost newspaper office can decide on its own goals. Closing square bracket. Ghost newspaper. Luo Wen was very interested. The spread of this newspaper is similar to that of Sadako's videotape, which means that people who receive the newspaper will be locked in by ghosts. A thought flashed through Luo Wen's mind. A faint smile appeared on Luo Wen's face. The sky is completely dark. The ice froze the entire island along the sea, and Marineford was surrounded by gorgeous icy blue. Let's eat fish tonight. The black-haired young man waved his fishing rod and carried a low stool in one hand and walked casually to the edge of the island. Behind him was a small European-style single-family villa that was completely inconsistent with the lifeless gloom and corruption. In the uninhabited, ghost-ridden ghost land, he leisurely seemed to be on vacation by the sunny sea and golden beach. Luo Wen really intends to give herself a small vacation. He is holding a fishing rod, hanging bait and throwing hooks skillfully. The low stool under him is strengthened and softer than a lazy couch, which is very suitable for thinking about life. The newspaper office, since it is a newspaper, it must have a name. Luo Wen meditated. What's the name? There is it. Luo Wen's eyes lit up. Justice Daily. Marineford has always been a sanctuary of justice, and now it is his site. The newspaper named Justice Daily, which is really reasonable. Luo Wen's deep eyes flickered. A ghost slowly appeared behind him. It is densely packed, one layer after another, like a creeping 1,000-year-old corpse. The gloomy sea rolled up raging waves, frightened in the dark night. Luo Wen closed his eyes, looking like a vacationer who was serious fishing. Go. Hiss. Countless ghosts roared and roared out. The black mist broke through Marineford and flooded all over the world. Chapter 91 Haunted, Terrible Trial. Advertise here. The recent Grand Line is very unstable. Some strange things always happen. The cause is Granny Coco Lopo, the capital of the Seven Waters, said that she has always heard strange noises recently, when her sea train is running at night. I received a very strange newspaper, and that night, a strange cry came. It's a baby crying, and it's like a beast roaring. When I went to check, there was nothing there. On the other side of the Devil's Continent, Moria also heard the same report. Moria was staring at the newspaper in her hand with a headache. Justice Daily. He didn't subscribe to any newspapers. This thing suddenly appeared on the bed in his bedroom and surprised him. This is a strange newspaper composed of ghost stories. Thinking of ghosts, Moria would think of the young man at Marineford. Since returning to the Devil's Continent, there will always be a ghost land where ghosts gather in my mind. It's cold and hurricane. Hey, my lord, that voice is the same as this ghost story. The subordinate pointed to a story in the newspaper. The beginning of the story is that only at night can I hear the crying. The woman in red clothes starts to appear in the dream. Can't see her face, she gets closer and closer, and can hear the crying until the day, and you will find that you can't see her face. The woman in red was standing behind her. After Moria scanned the story, her horrible face was wrapped in gauze, and she couldn't see her expression clearly. Then I'll leave it to you. Master Moria, you. Don't point your finger at me. Moria was furious, but suddenly felt a little strange. The cold breath fell in his ears, and Moria was very uncomfortable. He turned his head, and a faceless woman in red was reflected in his pupils. Ding. Coco Luo gets a shock, startle point +10. Ding. Passengers get scared, scared point +100. At this time, Marineford, Luo Wen adjusted the position of the fishing rod, and a happy smile appeared between his eyebrows. The newspapers behind him flew out like snowflakes, and the system kept beeping. Ding, ding, ding. The world is haunted. Luo Wen put his chin on. It's really exciting. World Economic News Agency. Snowflakes of newspapers are pouring out of the printer in piles and are about to be sent to all parts of the world. Ha 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 ha. This time the sales have exceeded 1 billion. This Master's first-hand consultation is haunted, except for the CP agency, only I Morgans can do it. The whole world is haunted. The city of seven waters, the city of water, the most haunted Dressrosa has become a mess. Every day, no, haunted events happen every moment. Everyone is scared, they are all scared, because fear has attracted more and greater attention, they are eager to predict their own destiny. This haunted incident is not a threat, but a trial. Office. Morgans thought, and was struggling to write. For 7 days, the haunted incident has lasted for a full week, covering 56 islands in New World. Apart from islands, there are pirate boats. Morgan stared at the statistics, 1076 people, this number is still growing. This is the number of deaths killed by ghosts. In the past 7 days, there have been countless haunting incidents. I don't know how many ordinary people have been frightened, but most of the dead are pirates. The shadows envelop this sea. What is shocking, and even more deeply frightening, is that after Morgan's investigation, it was discovered that these dead pirates had done a lot of evil before. And these ghosts, like the judges of evil destiny, clean up systematically. Call. Morgans thought of this, threw away the pen, and took a deep breath, eyes gleaming. This is his reasoning. To be precise, it is a guess. But it is the most realistic guess made by combining his extremely accurate first-hand news and huge intelligence network. To be haunted is to judge evil. Just thinking that this headline was printed in the newspaper and sent to the world, Morgans could not help shaking with excitement. This news will definitely shake the entire sea. Ha 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 ha. Morgans laughed again, and walked out of the office with fresh headlines. The news agency is as busy as usual. The sound of phone bugs and the sound of printers are intertwined with each other. It is the most beautiful sound in the world. Go, make this tomorrow's headline news. Morgans handed the newspaper to the editor-in-chief. My guess, it will definitely shock the sea. Suddenly, a member ran in a panic. President. He walked in a hurry and almost fell in front of Morgans after eating shit. DC, I have said many times that the distance between your legs when walking in the newspaper is not allowed to exceed 10 centimeters. Do you want to be expelled? Morgans was unhappy. Dee's face was pale, her eyes were erratic, and her fingers tremblingly pointed behind her. Yes. Morgan's eyes widened. What? He looked in the direction of the member when he came. The door he opened was ajar, and it seemed that he had a pair of legs swaying at the door. Crunch, crunch. Everyone cast their gazes out of the door, their faces showing curiosity and fear. When the door was blown open by the wind, a staring blue face appeared in front of his eyes, and a hemp rope that was thicker than a finger was hanging from his neck. The noise came to an end in an instant. How about the money? Like a flower blooming on the sea. This island is called Boeing Islands. My name is Hercules. Mao. It's a handsome name, but can you please don't forget it, I have given up. Usopp gnawed at the plump and juicy fruit in despair. His body can no longer be measured by a normal human body. It looks like a huge ball from a distance, and the yellow fruit in his hand is a big ball that eats a small ball. Hercules ignored him and took out a newspaper from behind. Have a look. Usopp took it suspiciously, not forgetting to lick the pit of the fruit as he watched it. When he read the contents of the newspaper clearly, his small eyes showed deep doubts. Ghost story. Master, are there really ghosts in this world? Usopp asked. Chapter 92 The Man Who Made Marineford Fall. Advertise here. Are there really ghosts? Usopp has heard many stories since he was a child, and there are also horrible ghost stories. But the story is a story after all, and it is still different from reality. Usopp was a little confused. He seemed to have seen haunted news in the newspaper before. He who didn't believe in ghosts began to waver. Master, master. For a while, Usopp didn't hear the answer, so he looked up at Hercules. Like a sculpture, Hercules remained motionless in place, as if he hadn't heard Usopp's question. Usopp didn't care about his weirdness, but touched his arm. It's a bit cold. The sky is getting dark. The cold air seemed to come out from under the feet, and the temperature suddenly dropped. The clear sky just now was suddenly obscured by heavy dark clouds. Is it going to snow? This is the season for short sleeves. Da da da. The dead branches were crushed by a red leather shoe, making a slight noise. It's like singing in the silent night, which makes people horrified. Someone in the grass. Usopp's eyes lit up, and Twilight remembered being chased by the fierce unicorn before, expecting to become vigilant little by little. Regardless of the cold, Usopp slowly approached the grass. He was going to see what was inside. The grass is thick and dense, and the gaps in it are very small. It is estimated that it can only accommodate a small 843 cat. Grin. Empty grass. Nothing. Usopp was relieved, scaring himself. Da da da. Usopp's back felt cold. It was this voice again. This time it was louder, and it came from behind, as if it was close to him behind. Fear was in my heart. Usopp was too nervous. Is it a ghost? He was not sure, because of the uncertainty bred more intense fear. Even heroes should have the right to fear ghosts. Usopp didn't know. At this moment, a dark figure was jumping on his back, and his feet in red leather shoes were still dangling. The bound ghost lay on Usopp's back, then slowly stretched out a pale, scrawny palm, covering his mouth. Usopp. The smell of rotten flesh and zombies. This hand is. It was not a human hand at all, nor was it like an animal hand, it was covering his mouth. He looked up in horror, a pair of pupils without eyeballs staring at him. New world. Not far from Marin, CGEF, there is a small island. Because it is too small and economically backward, it is not on either of the retreat routes of Marine and the pirates. The largest building on the island is a tavern. The aroma of ale can be smelled as soon as the door is opened. It is the most crowded tavern on the island. Travelers will rest here and drink buckwheat wine. Discuss the situation. Have you heard that the ghost ship stopped at Manuha port? Don't mention it, the doors and windows of my street are locked. Do you remember Gavin? That guy is always domineering, relying on his own low-ranking swordsmanship, always bullying nearby residents. Now it's alright, he crazy. Shish, don't mention him, be careful that you are the next one to suffer. The discussion is getting smaller and smaller. There was a figure sitting on the bar counter. He looked like 40 years old. In fact, he was already 78 years old. He was wearing clothes that he had just changed from the clothing store. He threw the torn prison uniforms on the roadside. I took a little spark and ignited it into a big fire. Burndy World, a frightening name. He did not expect that 30 years later, he would still be able to escape the impervious prison. And all this is thanks to that young man. World lowered his head, not interested in joining the conversation. He recalled the manager along the way, and felt that his luck seemed a bit bad. 3 days ago, Marineford became a ghost land. The ghost opened the door of Impel down and released all the criminals. It was a heinous carnival. This is how World left with the crowd, but on the way to this small island, he first ran into the legendary ghost ship, and then ran into the guy called Gavin, in their lodging place. Early in the morning, he cried and laughed, howling ghosts and wolves on the street. Ghost, he didn't wear pants. World glanced at it and knew that this guy was scared mad, and this kind of thing often happened in prison. But he was still disillusioned. I have only been locked up for 30 years, and the world has become like this. World took a gulp of ale and pushed open the door of the hotel and walked out. The wind howled. World took a breath. He didn't feel right after 2 steps. It's too quiet. Even if there is no Gavin, that lunatic, there won't be even a pedestrian on this street. The alley by the side of the road was constantly filled with cold wind, as if there were thousands of cold little hands stroking the body. Damn it. World looked down at the black shadow that appeared out of nowhere at the entrance of the alley and cursed a swear word. The black shadow was small, and at first glance it looked like a thin child standing in the wind, but he knew it was a ghost. As early as after receiving the Momo fruit, World decided to eliminate everything that blocked him. He worked with Roger, Whitebeard, etc. to make the world government and Marine fearful. But right now, he turned his head and left. The name Luo Wen is no stranger to the ears of the 6th-tier prisoners. He knew that all this was done by that young man. He had met Luo Wen once, and Luo Wen even handed him a cake. A man who offered a reward of 30 million yuan but was imprisoned on the 6th floor. A man who casually made cakes in prison. A man who drove a ghost to make Marineford fall. If it wasn't necessary, he really didn't want to be an enemy of this strange guy. World's feeling for Luo Wen is very complicated. He is not afraid of marine, celestial dragons, or 4 emperors. But Luo Wen is different, he is weird. He doesn't want to confront Luo Wen, he still has something to do, so the best way is to avoid his ghost. I don't know when, the brisk walking under the feet turned into a trot. World ran for more than 10 minutes, and finally found that the ghost hadn't followed. World heaved a sigh of relief and frowned. It's really difficult. He was released from prison for 3 days. During these 3 days, there was not a day without a ghost, avoiding the ghost ship, and he did not expect that the town had fallen. The whole world is haunted by ghosts, even worse than in prisons. I heard that the pirates stopped making trouble in some places, because ghosts were more terrifying than their villains. So, why did he work so hard to escape from prison? At this moment, a pair of military boots and black pants appeared in front of World. Heir of the devil, Bullet stood before him, looking down at him condescendingly. World's pupils shrank suddenly. Chapter 93 Pay the price for Dover's death. Advertise here. Wald only felt cold, and there seemed to be a ghost beside him. He has obviously left that ghost. As soon as he looked up, he saw a man standing in front of him. This person is no stranger to him. The people in the LV6 prison where the world hears of the news are all wicked men, but the fierceness is also hierarchical. Long time no see. Bullet looked down at him condescendingly. He was taller than Wald and looked like a vicious thug. Before Bullet entered LV6, he had already gained notoriety with Roger. Roger is the One Piece, the existence that dominates this sea, and Douglas Bullet is known as the man who is infinitely close to One Piece. Wald's eyes widened, and his mind went blank for a moment. When I just wanted to ask why Bullet appeared in this small town, I saw a dark shadow slowly emerging from behind him. Ghost images appeared like black fog. Among them, Wald recognized Gavin, who was frightened by ghosts at a glance. He was black now, and his eyes were cold and nonchalant looking at him. There are also a few friends who are friends with each other, who are also among the ghosts. Ghost. Wald was taken aback, and a guess suddenly emerged in his heart. Bullet has been attributed to Luo Wen. He appears here with the ghost. There is only one possibility. It is for Luo Wen. Thinking of the ghost ship and other ghosts before. Are you here to kill me? Wald suddenly looked up. Do you know who they are? Bullet asked back, turning his body sideways to let him see the ghost behind him clearly. The ghosts seemed to be residents of the town, old and young, male and female. It's a wicked person. Bullet didn't really want him to answer, and continued to mutter to himself, in this world, evil people are easier to survive than good people, because they are hard to be punished while they are alive. You said that after the wicked person dies, the evil he has done can be wiped out. Seeing Wald's sight, Bullet grinned. Haunting is to punish the evil that cannot be punishable while alive. There was a hint of coolness on Wald's back, and a sense of heaviness spread over the sky. He turned and looked behind. A pale child ghost was lying behind him, his eyes turned white, no pupils. The world is turbulent, and the pattern is quietly changing. Because of the appearance of ghosts, the war-torn country miraculously stopped the war. The reason was that the attacking country learned that the other country was haunted, and the king ordered the fighting to stop. The former opponents jointly fend off ghosts, avoiding the flames of war and even the displacement of civilians. On the contrary, haunting has the least impact on the individual and the greatest impact on the national level. New World was the worst haunted, and many pirates died. Nowadays, many people have left the Grand Line and returned to their hometown, the Four Seas. The Four Seas are not haunted and are the calmest seas. Many people used to think that Grand Line and New World were wonderful, but now they think that the poor villages and remote areas of the Four Seas are the best place. Many celestial dragons also discovered this and bought islands to live in all over the world. In the hearts of many civilians who are free from war and pirates, this haunting has turned out to be a blessing. Dressrosa. The clouds of Wujuyong are pressing against the sky, and a rainstorm may fall at any time. The news of Doflamingo's death came, and the Don Quixote family was uncharacteristically silent. Only they know that the calmer the sea, the more monstrous wolves will be set off. King's Heights. The cadres sat in a group, their eyes scarlet. It's the ghost who killed the young master. Pika's eyes were red, and his fist was clenched. Dover treats them like relatives, and they are also completely loyal to Dover. The relationship between them is no longer a master-servant relationship, but a close family. Sugar hugged her legs and buried her head in her knees, crying tremblingly. No matter who moves the hand, they will pay the price. Diamante said with a sullen face. The other cadres also looked sorrowful and wished to smash the murderer into thousands of pieces. The news of the king's death came when the rain was pouring. The sound of rain cannot conceal the sorrow and anger of the residents. They admire the beloved king. They were given a life of peace and contentment, and they were carefree, but they died in the hands of evil spirits. For flowers, vengeance, revenge for the king, anger broke through their heads. At the same time, news of Doflamingo's death also reached another person's ears. Wanokuni. The figure on the seat is extremely tall and burly, with a pair of long horns like dragon horns, a dragon beard on his mouth, a dragon scale tattoo on his left arm, and his upper body is naked. When Pika and others came to the meeting hall, they saw such a picture. Because of Doflamingo's death, the underground world fell apart. As soon as Kaido, Pika spoke, he was interrupted by Kaido's wave. Poor joke, actually died in Marineford. Kaido said, tears shed on his ferocious beast's face. The cadres of the Don Quixote family were taken aback first, but were also aroused by sadness and anger. Please avenge him. Diamante stared at Kaido. We are willing to give everything. Silence. Boom. Kaido smashed a cup abruptly and swept the cadres in front of him. I agree. When the cadres of the Don Quixote family retired, Kaido replaced him with a new wine cup. Before the tears on his face were dry, he suddenly picked up the wine glass and laughed. Poor joke, although you are too weak to blame for all this. Then he drank it. Jin and Jack under the seat have long been used to this scene, drinking their own wine with their heads down. Brother, I can join forces with Charlotte Linlin and go to Marineford. Jin suddenly said. As we all know, Marineford has become a new ghost land, and Luo Wen must have not left yet. Jin is very interested in Luo Wen's ability. What kind of ability is it to control ghosts and kill people? He wants to meet the rumored Luo Wen in person. To build an army, Luo Wen is the best choice. Looking for Luo Wen? Kaido asked. Baked nodded. Kaido laughed and drank a barrel of wine. I am optimistic about Luo Wen. He will be a good crew member just like you, Jin, but be careful. Go find Linlin. Yi. Chapter 94 The First Emperor of the Sea, Luo Wen. Advertise here. Wanokuni. The aroma of pouring wine filled every inch of the hall. Baked his wine glass, his eyes condensed slightly. I remembered one of the last supernova that made him a little interested, called Hawkins. He is very interested in his methods. Unfortunately, that guy is too weak. It can't be compared with Luo Wen at all. No one noticed that a thick newspaper suddenly appeared on the empty wine table. Until some subordinates found out and presented it to Kaido, everyone realized that something was wrong. Ghost Story newspaper. Jack's scarlet eyes were full of doubts. This is not the World Economic News. To be precise, even newspapers are not counted. Because it is not paper that is printed one by one, but pieces of dead human skin. The wind was beautiful, and news birds flew past the sky, and, August 7, flew to all parts of the Grand Line. 3 days have passed since the discovery of the hanging ghost. World Economic News. Puff Lu Lu Lu. Has the new newspaper been printed? You have to think of a good news headline. The phone worm and the staff members were constantly ringing in the office. Morgans was so busy. He is now planning to create a new column, new business opportunities, and collect some ghost stories from Bullet, as well as Lord Bakiko from Cake Island and so on. Integrate these ghost stories and legends into a collection. The new column will be very popular, ha 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 ha. The haunted events in Marineford and Cake Island are the best catalysts. Can the newspaper break 500 million this time? No, maybe 1 billion. Morgans is confident in this new column. The reaction of people after reading the new column has emerged in the bird's eye. Isn't today's World Economic newspaper coming? I want to read the latest ghost stories. This ghost story is amazing, so realistic and interesting, I want to buy 10 more copies. These are all collected by President Morgans. In addition to him, the president of the great World Economic News, who else has such a keen sense of news to catch the hot spots of ghost stories? At this time, the door of the office was pushed open. The supervisor walked in, wearing a newspaper uniform with a bright red mark on his forehead. President, the new section of the newspaper we prepared, some people quickly published it first. Morgans was taken aback, glanced strangely at the red print on his head, and was quickly attracted by the photo in his hand. When he sees clearly the content on the photo, that is a newspaper made of human skin. The specially processed human skin still retains the texture of the skin, adding a thick horror and weirdness to the ghost stories printed on it. It's really a ghost story newspaper. Damn, which bastard is this robbing him of business? Damn bastard, these stories must be made up. Morgans was exasperated. In terms of world intelligence, Morgans is number 1 in the world. Apart from him, who else can collect so many real ghost stories in the first place? President. The supervisor lowered his head and said, this newspaper seems to come from Impel Down. Morgans was stunned. Ghost newspaper Impel Down. Apart from that person in Impel Down, who else has the ability to make a ghost story newspaper? Can they still quietly send it to the World Economic News? Luo Wen. Morgan squinted and stared at the newspaper in front of him. Ghost newspapers, just like videotapes, are meant to spread ghost stories and make the haunting influence wider. To put it bluntly, it is Luo Wen's method to promote haunting. Luo Wen is not haunted, so why did he grab business with our World Economic News Agency? Morgans paused. Suddenly, he raised his head and scanned the reluctant members of the office with a sharp line of sight. When it comes to newspapers, Morgans, the world's #1 intelligence king, will not lose to anyone. Since war has been declared against us, let's fight it openly. The sales of World Economic newspapers will never lose to any newspaper. Seeing Morgans all of a sudden high spirits and gearing up, the members of the newspaper were stunned. President, no one has declared war on you. The supervisor reminded. From now on, we have to publish ghost stories faster than Luo Wen. Morgans clenched his fists. No, it's impossible. That's Luo Wen's ghost. Morgans couldn't hear it at all, turned his head vigorously, and asked aggressively, what's the name of their newspaper? Justice Daily. The supervisor answered obediently. What the hell is this name? It doesn't matter. Morgans frowned. I want to defeat the Justice Daily. Update the content of the newspaper immediately. I have to revise it. Ha ha ha. If this is to defeat the Justice Daily, the president will not count. I have defeated the 5th emperor in the world, Luo Wen. Morgans turned his head, his ambition was already burning. The 5th emperor. No, the 1st emperor. The 1st emperor on the sea. Luo Wen. Added the title. My Morgans defeated the 1st emperor. Morgans gave Luo Wen the title, which he felt was very consistent. Although it is a dispute over newspaper sales, the defeat is beyond doubt. The supervisor was speechless. President, the hanged ghost has been hanging at the door for 3 days. The supervisor wanted to cry without tears. The hanged ghost hasn't been solved yet. I think I have won Luo Wen. Speaking of which, the hanged ghost is too lingering. The first time the ghost was discovered 3 days ago, President 4.5 ordered the move. But in the middle of the night, the supervisor suddenly smelled a foot odor, opened his eyes, and the ghost was hanging on the top of his bed. Only 1 step away, he is about to die on the spot. If he hadn't acted decisively, knelt on the ground and banged his head for a long time, banged his head, and talked about his life jealously and hatred for a long time, his usual hobby is to help grandma cross the waterway, and now he has a dog. The red mark on his forehead is the result of a kowtow. There will always be a way, I'm thinking about it. Morgans pointed to the table, and there was a devil fruit illustrated book. He knocked on the table and thought, I just got news that Linlin and Kaido are going to deal with Luo Wen. I think I can make a deal with them and ask them to help us get rid of the hanged ghost first. Chapter 95 Whitebeard will die. Advertise here. Speaking of 2-4 emperors doing a deal to exorcise ghosts. This may seem difficult, but for Morgans, who relies on intelligence to roam the major forces, it is not difficult. Morgan's eyes flashed with the potential to win. At the same time, Impel down the big prison. The prison has been very lively recently, with noisy voices. Blackbeard's massive invasion destroyed many buildings, and also let go of many wicked people. Hundreds of wastes are thriving and are waiting to be repaired. The jailers began to get busy again, not only to repair the prison, but also to put the criminals back in prison, and to register the escaped people in the register and report them. The prisoners were also happy to be free. This time the Impel down was in chaos and many prisoners escaped, such as Jinbei who left with a straw hat, Demei who was recruited by Blackbeard, the evil wolf and so on. However, most of the prisoners remain in prison. For example, in order to cover Luffy, Bentham chose to stay Impel down alone, and was naturally brought back by Warden Magellan. He didn't lose the slightest bit about the fact that he finally failed to escape and was caught back. Instead, he made his bed very naturally. Suddenly, there was a bleat from outside the door. The cry of sheep sounded in the silent prison. Bentham didn't look up, and the other people in the prison seemed to be used to it long ago, doing their own things. Not only them, but even the jailer closed one eye. Finally, I saw a black-clothed and dark-haired young man walking leisurely in the prison with a little white sheep, just like walking in his own garden. Luo Wen started walking the sheep again. This has become a classic reserved item for the criminals after a meal. No one cares about Luo Wen, and can't care about it. Didn't he just take a shot without seeing him, and turned the many Ma Lin into a ghost land? I can only let it go. So everyone in the prison acquiesced and watched Luo Wen walk the sheep in the prison regularly every day. The sheep were obtained from Sengoku. Luo Wen was originally intended to be food, but now it is also good to bring it as a pet. It has been half a month since the fall of Marineford. For the past 2 months, Marine has directly blocked the water around Marineford. Let Kuzan freeze it all. Naval Headquarters also moved naturally to the G1 branch, and a new Naval Headquarters will be established soon. In this top war, not only did the Whitebeard pirates lose a lot, but Marine and Impel down also suffered heavy losses. Not to mention how many criminals escaped on the 6th floor. The son of One Piece was executed and turned into a ghost in full view and followed Whitebeard to leave. Marshal Sengoku's resignation has been confirmed. Who will become the next marshal? Who will become the new admiral? Marine is also very busy. The initiator of all this turned out to be a handsome, black-haired young man walking sheep in prison. That sheep, I heard it belongs to Marshal Sengoku. Real or fake? Many prisoners who have changed rooms are curious. They have heard of Luo Wen's name, but today they saw the legendary Vice Admiral LV's 6 upset character. They knew that Luo Wen would not do anything with them, so they watched this scene one by one. That's Sengoku's sheep, I can't even think about it, he actually dared to do it. Don't say it's walking Sengoku's sheep, do you know what Luo Wen did? Prisoners who knew Luo Wen's deeds began to popularize science. Recently, the 6th floor has been repaired and there are more guards. Sometimes they know the situation outside from the guards. Resurrection Ace, Marineford fell into a pile of things, and one thing came out of his mouth. The prisoners who heard it were dumbfounded, and their faces were full of admiration. Ding. The 6th prisoner is frightened. Frightened point plus 10. Ding. The 6th floor prisoner is frightened. Frightened point plus 10. Luo Wen is walking the sheep. He heard the sound of startled harvest in his mind, he didn't care, but his eyes flickered slightly, and he muttered in a low voice. Whitebeard, dying. Luo Wen said this in a small voice, but did not deliberately hide it. Next to him, a guard who was cleaning the broken bricks and passing by with his things was stunned on the spot. Boom. The guard slipped his hands in fright and almost smashed something, but he had no intention of worrying about his own things, but looked at Luo Wen in shock. What did you say? Luo Wen glanced at him and repeated it. Everyone heard this now, and Whitebeard was dying. The strongest man in the world is dying. This is undoubtedly news that will shake the entire Impel down. The prison was suddenly boiling. Whether it was a jailer or a criminal, he couldn't believe it when he heard the news. I heard that Whitebeard is dying. I heard that he was pierced in his chest at Marineford, sure enough. Is the news reliable? Whitebeard is the strongest in the world. How could such a man die easily? Luo Wen said it himself. The guard scratched his head. When Luo Wen told the news, his face was very determined, as if he had witnessed it with his own eyes. He did see it too, but not through his own eyes, but through the eyes of the ghost ace. He has no intention of inquiring about the Whitebeard group, because it doesn't matter to him, but everything the ghost sees will pass into his eyes, and what the ghost sees is what he sees. So even though Luo Wen is in prison, he can see all over the world as long as he wants to. But in the eyes of others who don't know the truth, they only feel the unfathomable horror of Luo Wen. What about others? The guard and the prisoner were about to ask Luo Wen for confirmation, but when they turned their heads, they found that he had disappeared, and even the sheep did not know when it had disappeared. Don't look, it disappeared for a while. The prisoner's new cellmate looked curious. What the hell is this guy's ability? Is it devil fruit? What devil fruit can predict the future? The rain fell down and hit the deck. Those who sail on the sea always pay special attention to the weather. If it is sunny, it's just a little bit of the sun, and you can hide in the cabin to shade. If it encounters a heavy rain, not only will it be soaked by the rain, but it will also cause unstable factors such as waves, tsunami and uzumaki. This is for the pirates who seek life in the sea, is undoubtedly a fatal disaster. The Moby Dick was driving in the middle of the sea, surrounded by pirate boats, large and small, surrounding the Moby Dick, like sons escorting his father. On the deck, Whitebeard sat in the seat he often sat, with needles all over his body. Surrounded by his family members. Everyone's faces did not have the joy of rescuing Icy, they were full of heavy sorrow. They all knew about Whitebeard's current physical condition. Since the war, his wounds have been difficult to heal. It has now reached the point of deterioration. Whitebeard's body is getting weaker day by day. Daddy. Ace looked at Whitebeard with pain on his face. He is no longer the strongest man in the world, but an ordinary old man in his twilight years. I'm sorry. Ace lowered his head helplessly, almost overwhelmed by guilt. Whitebeard opened his eyes and looked at him. Apologize. You are not wrong, my son. The Moby Dick is old and it is useless to repair it. It's better to let it go with me and stay with me, and it will not be so lonely on the road. The sons next to him felt even more sad when he said this. The old man was talking about the boat, but he was actually himself. Father. Whitebeard waved his hand and struggled to get up. He stood up under Malgo's change of support and the worried eyes of all his sons. The body is still tall, but not as strong and burly as when he was young. The battle-tested spine is already a little unseen. Under the cloak behind, are the scars of his battles over the years, and also his glory. After I die, you can do what you want to do. If you want to continue to be a pirate, you can continue. If you get tired of doing it, you can also find a quiet island to live in. I'm most worried about Teach. He is a narrow-minded man, and he will definitely hate you when he fails this time. Teach this person has not small ambitions but also has means. If he really wants to pursue it, he will not let you go. You have to be extra careful. Listening to Whitebeard's narration of the funeral, everyone's expressions were filled with sorrow. The silence submerged the splint. Whitebeard looked at the endless sea, remembering the time he had just gone to sea. He has nothing to ask for in this period of life with his family at sea. Puff. Suddenly, Whitebeard spurted out a mouthful of blood, and his huge and burly body was shaking and smashing towards the ground. Marco was by his side. 847 quickly supported him with eyesight and hands. Sent to bed in time to lie down and get medical treatment, Whitebeard fell into a coma. The sudden vomiting of blood made everyone unexpected. It turns out that Daddy's body is already weak to this point. Joe's murmured sadly, feeling very uncomfortable. Looking at the fainted figure of Whitebeard, Vista's eyes turned red and turned away. Ace knelt beside his father. Among the many people present, no one was more guilty than he was hurt for his father. Ice. In the crowd, there was a voice that hesitated to speak. Can Luo Wen resurrect Daddy? Heel said hopefully. Ace was startled. Yes, Luo Wen can resurrect Ace. Can he resurrect Whitebeard? Even if he lives as a ghost. This sentence reminded everyone present that they all hope that Dad can continue to live. So they turned their hopes to Ace. Ace didn't answer. His eyes showed a slight hesitation. Of course he wanted to resurrect the old man. However, Luo Wen's strength is well known. Although he has some contact with himself, his friendship is not deep. It was unexpected that Ace himself was resurrected. Would he be willing to resurrect the old man? In the current Baituan, no one is qualified to negotiate terms with Luo Wen. Others also thought of this layer. They don't know the relationship between Ace and Luo Wen, but since Luo Wen is willing to resurrect Ace, there may be a slight possibility. Ace didn't hesitate for long. He stood up and said, I'm going to find Luo Wen. He was going to beg Luo Wen, even if it was kneeling. If Luo Wen is willing, he can exchange everything he owns. A touch of firmness flashed in Ace's eyes. Without further ado, he decided to impel down and ask Luo Wen for help. Someone is looking for me. Outside the crowd, a young and lazy voice came to everyone's ears. Everyone turned around and was stunned. The end of the deck. The black-clothed and dark-haired young man led a sheep and stepped on the deck leisurely, looking at them lightly. Chapter 96. My name is Kaido. I was dead when you saw this news. Advertise here. When Luo Wen went to the Moby Dick, Morgan's call also led to the Ghost Island. This call is completely confidential. No one except Kaido and Morgans knew the content of the call, nor did they know what terms Morgans used to persuade Kaido. That night, Jin received the order. After reaching a cooperation with Charlotte Linlin, he went to the World Economic News to expel the hanged ghost. Big brother Jin, how could Luo Wen suddenly attack the albatross? Jack scratched his head. Everyone knows about the haunted incidents during this period. The first to get the news was the World Economic News. Is it because the newspaper reported the haunted incidents that angered Luo Wen? Morgan's intelligence is not bluffing, and there are many organizations who want to kill him. He knows too many things that he shouldn't know, but he has been living under everyone's eyes. Yan shook his head. He didn't know why Luo Wen made the shot or why Kaido was willing to help. Regardless of the reason, since brother Kaido has ordered, just drop by. I will go to Cake Island tomorrow. That night, the huge skull of the Ghost Island loomed in the deep sea. The island was covered by the sky full of darkness, and layers of thick white mist quietly filled it. The fog is getting thicker and thicker. Why is it suddenly foggy? I can't see anything clearly. The residents of Turtle Island were discussing the sudden appearance of the fog early in the morning. The thick fog is like a veil, covering the entire track, making people panic without seeing their fingers. Jingle bell. There was a faint sound of bells in the fog. In the thick fog, you can't see anything, but the sound of the bell is particularly clear, as if it is ringing in your ears. A dim yellow light flickered in the distance, and the temperature dropped suddenly. A dark figure squirmed slowly. Jingle bell, jingle bell. A guy dressed like a postman, riding a bicycle, broke through the thick fog. Those who saw him were taken aback. This is not a person on the island. No one has landed on Quito recently, but notifications are made whenever they land on the island, but there is no news at all. This strange postman just rode on his car and landed on the island like no one else. Jack was the first to receive the news. When he came, someone had already shot at the postman. Bew. The bullet passed through his body. It's a ghost. Jack looked gloomy, raised his hand and stopped the useless shooting. For the ghost, no matter how fast the bullet is, it is meaningless. Facing the rain of bullets, the speed of the postman ghost did not stop in the slightest. Like every conscientious worker, he rode towards Kaido's residence. Ghost, it's a ghost here on the island. Help. The residents of Ghost Island saw this scene, only feeling cold in their hands and feet. The last time the unlucky ghost came, they didn't show up in front of them, and it was the first time they saw the legendary ghost. I watched the ghost and heard that the ability of the bullet fruit is useless for the ghost, and now it seems to be true. Boom. Heavy footsteps came from behind. Kaido, the tall and burly king of beasts, came to the street with a hip flask, looking straight at the postman ghost riding a bicycle. His appearance calmed everyone present. Brother Kaido, do you want me to stop him? Jack asked. Kaido shook his head. No. When Kaido appeared, the ghost came towards him riding a bicycle. Kaido watched the ghost approaching. The ghost was wearing a postman hat and uniform, and his hands and face were covered with a black cloth, so he couldn't see his appearance. He was also impressed by the bad luck last time. After several days of bad luck, he either drank water and stuck between his teeth or fell on the ground while walking. What tricks does the ghost want to play this time? Kaido felt a little jealous in his heart. Nothing was revealed on his face. The bicycle stopped in front of Kaido. The postman got out of the car, took out the human skin newspaper behind him and placed it in front of Kaido. Then turned and stepped on the car and entered the thick fog. Everyone was waiting for the postman track's next reaction, and they were all taken aback when they saw him disappearing into the thick fog just riding the car body. Is this ghost here to deliver the newspaper? Jack's eyes widened. This newspaper looks familiar, and they have received it before. It is all ghost stories. Is it a daily ghost story? What is Luo Wen doing? Kaido stared at the human skin newspaper in front of him. There was a burst of ink fragrance from above, apparently just out of the oven. A gust of wind blew up a corner of the newspaper, revealing the bright red words on it. My name is Kaido. When you see this sentence, I'm already dead. Dead still. When the people present saw this sentence, they didn't respond immediately. Damn it. Jack Shumu was scarlet and hit the ground with a fist. He suddenly turned into a mammoth, roaring and chasing in the direction where the ghost postman disappeared. Mischief. Actually dared to prank on Kaido's head. Kaido's reaction was very calm, his eyes chatting with the words on the human skin newspaper. No one knew what he was thinking. Not long after, Jack came back, his head downcast. Brother Kaido, I didn't catch him, he disappeared. Quote. That ghost postman is really like a ghost. No one knows where he came from or how he left. Only this prank newspaper is left. Kaido took a look. Except for the human skin and the content on it, this is really just a newspaper, exactly the same as the ghost story newspaper delivered yesterday. Maybe it was a prank. Kaido thought, suppressing the fear in his heart. This newspaper burned. Yes, brother Kaido. Jack lit the fire at the newspaper. The fire snake bit the human skin fiercely and went up. After lighting the fire, he ignored him. Jack threw the newspaper in the corner to do his own thing. But when money, Zhao, after the flame burned out, I saw the human skin newspaper in place, with the words on it as bright as blood. Jack was shocked. Can't burn the cabinet. He didn't believe it, but he changed to tearing and other ways to damage it, but once the operation was completed, the human skin newspaper was still intact, and the words on it were even scarier. Had to bring the newspaper back to Kaido again. In the room. The atmosphere is gloomy and terrible. Kaido looked at the newspaper in front of him. From the time Ghost Yuza appeared, he had a vague premonition in his heart. The human skin newspaper in front of her was not damaged in the slightest because of the traces left by burning and other methods. It was even more weird to choose this matter. At this time, the bright red words in the newspaper began to distort and change. My name is Kaido. I was dead when you saw this news. The reason was that I was going to burn a newspaper. Chapter 97 Cake Island is haunted. Ghost Press. Advertise here. My name is Kaido. I was dead when you saw the news. The reason was that I was going to burn a newspaper. The bright red font slowly emerged. It gradually became a sentence, supplementing the original cause of death. The human skin paper and the bright red blood-like characters seemed to have some curse power, which made people tremble. Brother Kaido. Jack's eyes were scarlet, and he looked at Kaido incredulously. Kaido sat on the high platform, his muscles bulging and beating like a horned dragon. The fierce wounds on the flanks were trembling slowly with breathing, like a fierce dragon. His huge palm rested on the armrest made of animal teeth and fangs, and there was no expression on his domineering and fierce face. The air is so quiet that you can breathe. This newspaper turned out to be alive. The font above is more like alive, and things that have happened slowly emerge, as if they had been predicted. And it's just in the blink of an eye. Weird. They seem to have underestimated Luo Wen and his ghost. If it is a head-on confrontation. Jack is not fake at all, but this kind of weird and confusing method is like a transparent lion majesty, with fangs full of venom in the shadow, and a fatal blow. Take my phone, worm. I want to talk to Charlotte Linlin myself. Kaido sinks. A deep and majestic voice came from Kaido in the seat. He stared at the human skin newspaper on the table in front of him, with 847 doubts and fears flashing in his eyes. Is it a prank or a war book? No, it's not so much a battle book written by Luo Wen, it's more like a death notice that predicts the future in advance. No matter what he does, a scarlet letter will appear next. He doesn't know if this is Luo Wen's trick or something else, Kaido doesn't care. But he would never allow his majesty to be provoked. Kaido's eyes were cold, and he took the phone worm from his hands and dialed Charlotte Linlin's number. He wants to show his attitude to Linlin. They can cooperate briefly to kill Luo Wen together. With regard to the haunted things all over the world, after a period of silence, it finally swept across the world. News of the world, to make everything public. For a time, all the people on the sea knew that all parts of the world were haunted. Late at night, Toto Land is on the Cake Island. Open your eyes is enough to cover the thick fog, endless. Damn it, when will this fog dissipate? A resident cursed while looking out the window. It is normal to have some sea fog on the island, but this heavy fog is too weird. No one cared at the beginning. When I realized it, the fog had swallowed the cake upside down. From a distance, I could only see the fog, not the island. Boom boom boom. He looked up at the entrance, who was knocking at the door so late. Is this colleague Rick? Apologize for the accident that happened while making the cake. He got up and opened the door. Crunch. The light leaked a gap to the top of the stairs, illuminating the figure outside the door. Rick. He looked out the door hesitantly. The figure standing outside the door crouched, wrapped in a black robe, standing in a strange posture, and his legs bent unnaturally. He did not show his face, and his face was also wrapped in a black robe. The protruding parts were sharp and rugged, not like facial features, but like fangs with teeth and claws. It's weird. A guy who wrapped himself so tightly knocked on his door late at night. The light illuminates his black robe very hard, his shadow under the street lamp. And many more. This guy has no shadow. The residents gave a cold face, and rumors of haunting flashed through their minds. Ghosts have no shadows. Isn't the face under the black robe not a person, but a pale grimace with pale eyes? For a moment, his breathing stopped. At this moment, the shadow moved. He still maintained a weird posture, with his arms stretched out over his shoulders to his back, pulling out a roll of newspaper slowly as if pulling out his spine, and handing it to him. That is a human skin newspaper. The resident's eyes widened in horror, and his legs flicked. He watched him put the newspaper in his hands. There was no way to move, let alone escape. The whole person stood stiffly in place, like a frozen corpse. He could feel the ghost hand rubbing his skin, and the cold breath made him tremble. I'm afraid that the ghost will lift the black robe in the next second and scare him. But the ghost did not do this. He finished delivering the newspaper stiffly, and returned to the bicycle at a strange step. Carrying a bicycle full of newspapers, ride towards the next house. Jingle bell. The weird ringtone faded away in the fog. Until the shadow disappeared in the fog. CGEF. Call. The feeling of cold breath disappeared suddenly. The residents panted, staring at the human skin newspaper in their hands in horror, and wanted to throw them away, but they opened the newspaper involuntarily with their hands. Then he read the contents of the newspaper clearly. Sadako's videotape. When you get this videotape, you must deliver it to the 7 closest people within 7 days, otherwise, you will die. Cake Island. It is made up of countless small cakes and creams. The biggest piece of cake is the palace of Bigmom Charlotte Linlin, Queen of Nations. The stairs were covered with expensive and gorgeous red carpets, and the sound of shoes rubbing the carpet sounded in the empty palace. Ghost story. Katakuri turned to look to his side. A girl with reindeer antlers on her head sits on the court chair next to her. She is the 17th daughter of Charlotte Linlin, Malise. At this time, Mei Lisa was wearing a beautiful palace dress, holding a shocking human skin newspaper in his hand. My subordinates have received this, presumably yours also received it. I checked it, and it is printed on a ghost story. Mei Lisa spread the newspaper and handed it to him. Katakuri glanced at the eye-catching title, Sadako's videotape, frowning slightly. He thought of this sudden fog. What is the relationship between this sudden ghost story human skin newspaper? Without time to think about it, he has more important things to do at the moment. Understood. I will report this to my mother for you. Katakuri turned around and walked towards Big Mom Charlotte Linlin's bedroom, holding a phone worm who was talking in his hand. Mei Lisa looked at the figure he was going away, and the phone worm in his hand was mimicking Kaido, the king of beasts. What is Kaido looking for, Mom? Mei Lisa thought for a while, but couldn't understand. She shook her calf and lowered her head to continue reading the ghost story in the newspaper with relish. Kaido would actually call his mother. Katakuri was also a little surprised when he received the call. The 4 emperors checks and balances each other, but in a sense, they are also a community of interests that oppose world politics. I just don't know why Kaido suddenly asked her mother to cooperate. Katakuri thought. He had come to the door of his mother's bedroom. The door in front of the room is pink, dominated by beautiful cake patterns, inlaid with sweet and delicious cream. Big Mom's temperament fluctuates. If he breaks into the room without authorization, his mother will be angry, so Katakuri just stood at the door and knocked on the door. Knock knock knock. 3 minutes passed, and there was silence inside the door. Katakuri frowned and knocked again. Still silent, as if there was no one. Even if my mother is sleeping, she should be able to hear it. Katakuri muttered to herself. It's impossible for a strong mother of this level to fall asleep unsuspectingly, even knocking on the door. Unless, he thought of some possibility, his face changed. But now in Cake Island, this is my own territory and the strongest mother, what can happen? Katakuri frowned, her eyes tightly on the pink bedroom door in front of her. At the same time, in the bedroom, Charlotte and Linlin were lying on the bed, listening to 2 knocks outside the door, and then there was silence. Her eyes widened and scarred with bloodshot eyes, she wanted to get up, but her huge body seemed to be imprisoned on the bed, unable to move. Chapter 98 Ant's Anger. Call from Kaido. Advertise here. At this moment, the bedroom was completely dark. The whole room seems to have fallen into an endless abyss, dark and deep, choosing people to eat. Charlotte Linlin's red-blooded eyes turned, looking at the shadows and darkness, as if the next moment, all the shadows and darkness will be pressed against you. A violent gasp echoed in the air, very depressing. Can't move. Can't move. The body is like being pressed by something invisible, even with the strength of the whole body, it can't move, can't bounce it. Charlotte Linlin stared, wide eyes staring outside the door. Boom, boom. A crisp knock on the door sounded for the 3rd time. She wanted to open her mouth, but the upper and lower lips seemed to be sewn together and could not be opened at all. It seemed like her bed was under her body, but it was different. It was more like countless little hands stretched out from the endless abyss, pressing her huge body firmly. Obviously nothing is pressing her, but she can't move at all. Charlotte Linlin's pupils shrank, her scalp was numb, and she suddenly realized a possibility. She stared at the quilt that was shrouded in darkness. Something was pressing her on the quilt. The mind exploded. What is it? In the middle of the night, something that shouldn't be in her room is now in her room. Even on her quilt. All of it quickly went through the screening in Charlotte Linlin's mind. She was shaking wildly, and the bed was crunching. Outside, Katakuri stood in the same place, and a few more people appeared beside them, all of whom were children of Charlotte Linlin stationed on Cake Island. They are arguing about whether to enter the bedroom or not, and they are at a stalemate at the moment. Opella shook her head first. Mom won't like us to disturb her. I have seen my mother draw Moscato's 40-year life since I was a child, and Opella didn't want Katakuri to follow suit. Mei Lisa retorted, but mother has never slept to death. Isn't it weird not to speak? That's it, but how can we guess what mommy thinks? Enough. Katakuri interrupted coldly when they had a headache because of their quarrel. I want to make sure my mother's safety first. He took a step forward without hesitation, and shot directly, and the other children showed some worry and fear when they saw it. A punch with ultimate power blasted out. Boom. The door shattered into countless pieces and fell to the ground. Everything in the room is unobstructed, exposed in front of everyone. The dark room was surrounded by a thick mist, which was deeper than the night. The mist enveloped the bed, to be precise, the mother's body. Katakuri's pupils shrank suddenly. What is that? How did he come to his mother's room silently? At this time, Zeus, a familiar voice murmured. Immediately afterwards, a violent and vast thundercloud appeared in the air, flashing thunder and lightning, fierce and domineering. Prometheus. A burst of hot air filled the room, and a bright golden fire cloud emerged in the sky. Charlotte Linlin opened her eyes suddenly. The fire was raging in the dark room, and the arcs were intertwined, as if it had become the most terrifying Wang Yang. Rumbling. The thunder roared, as if thousands of horses were galloping, and the flames blazed into the sky, heading straight into the dense fog. The atmosphere of terror and depression filled the room in an instant. Mom is angry. The children present were all surprised and panicked. Katakuri was the closest, and he saw the thunder arc and the fire cloud rushing into the thick fog with his own eyes. What is that? It made my mother such a big fire. Fire clouds and thunder and lightning are intertwined, directly forcibly shaking away the fog. Boom. The thick layers of fog are directly broken up into countless pieces. Several figures beside Katakuri were also shaken out at the same time. And this time, Charlotte Linlin abruptly sat up from the bed. She felt the heaviness on her body suddenly disappeared, and the invisible pressure disappeared as the dense fog dissipated. Call. Charlotte Linlin's chest rises and falls violently, panting, and there is still the same thing in her mind. Something's wrong, that feeling. Obviously there is nothing, but his body is like a huge island. I want to move, but can't move. There is no way to control the body, so I can only open my eyes. In the dimness, there seemed to be a ghost. Is it a ghost? Charlotte Linlin's face was hard to look. Katakuri walked in, worried. Mom, what happened? Zeus and Prometheus have returned, squatting obediently on Charlotte Linlin's shoulders. Charlotte Linlin is still thinking about ghosts. For flowers. What exactly does Luo Wen mean? Sending a ghost to his room, is it a provocation? Or a signal for war? She only met Jin of Beasts Pirates today, and she was noncommittal about Kaido's desire to eradicate Luo Wen. But now it seems that we have to reconsider. Charlotte Linlin had a sullen face, and the children who had been shocked came back. They were standing in the doorway with shame. With such a disturbance, Charlotte Linlin's sleepiness was dispelled. She glanced at everyone and looked at Katakuri. What are you holding? Katakuri lowered his head. Kaido of Beasts is calling for you, mother. There has been a lot of fog in the town recently and something has appeared. Fog. It's a lot of fog, Mom, and a strange postman has appeared. Charlotte Linlin's eyelids twitched, and when she heard the fog, she would think of the ghost that had been lying in the room before. She knows each of her children and Katakuri, meaningless news will not let him disturb her sleep specially. Do you suspect someone is making a ghost? Katakuri remained silent, and handed her the human skin newspaper with the ghost story in her hand. Charlotte Linlin read the newspaper, looked up at Katakuri, and asked, Katakuri, what do you think? Ghost stories, then it must be related to that one. They have all heard about the haunted news, but they didn't expect that she and Kaido hadn't done anything yet. Luo Wen had already reached out to Cake Island first. Katakuri said softly after hearing the words, Mom, this Luo Wen, we did not pay attention to it before, but judging from his deeds, he can come and go freely in Impel down LV6, and he can also turn many Marin into Ghost Land. Quote. Judging from his 20s, there is no doubt that he has very good talent and potential, and his strength is not weak. Katakuri's words are actually somewhat restrained. He knew that his mother had a deal with Kaido and wanted to deal with Luo Wen together. But where is Impel down? Bronze Wall and Iron Wall. A myth that has been blown down by world politics for 800 years, it is known as the death place of pirates. Luo Wen can come and go freely, he can't think of any place to trap him. Puffling. At this moment, the phone worm in his hand rang suddenly. It turned out to be Kaido. Billion. Chapter 99 Ant's Greed, Fighting to Die for the Whitebeard site. Advertise here. Kaido also called before, it was when Charlotte Linlin's room was haunted. During Charlotte Linlin's busy time, he was not idle, and he was having a headache. How's the arms business? Kaido asked Quinn. Quinn shook his head. Joke died suddenly, now the underground world is in a mess. Using Wano Kuni's massive labor force to build arms and become an arms dealer is Kaido's business for a long time. It is impossible to pay for wages, and slavery is serious. Because of the long-term slavery, some people have become rebellious. The passengers who have accumulated over the years now burst out all at once, causing a lot of restlessness. The pattern of the world is quietly changing. Kaido heard the news, and his face was even more ugly. He picked up the phone worm and dialed Charlotte Linlin's number, August 47 inches again. This time, Charlotte Linlin picked it up. Kaido. In their position, Kaido, Charlotte Linlin, and Edward Newgate are all the same, holding the four forces to check and balance each other. Although Kaido lives in Wano Kuni and does not have any detailed information, his actions in private are not small, and Charlotte Linlin does not dare to underestimate him. Although it is still not called a pirate alliance, they check and balance each other and fight against the world government together. It is not impossible for them to join forces. But neither Charlotte Linlin nor Kaido expected that they would join forces for a pirate. A pirate, not even a pirate group. Katakuri stood aside respectfully. He couldn't hear the specific content of the phone, but could only see Charlotte Linlin's face sinking. What? Foresee the future. The intelligence capability of the Big Mom pirates is the first in the industry and is very powerful. Although they did not investigate Luo Wen's details, there were a lot of ghosts in Magellan, and Ace returned to the Whitebeard group with ghosts. Charlotte Linlin knew it for the first time. She doesn't like the army or anything. Toto Land also has an army, but they are scattered. The truly powerful is the Soul Legion under her hand, which is completely obedient to her, and powerful. Until just now, Charlotte Linlin didn't really feel that Luo Wen was beyond hopelessly strong. But what the hell is it to predict the future? Today, I received a newspaper. Charlotte Linlin didn't know why he suddenly brought up the newspaper. And his next sentence made her eyes wide. It says in the newspaper, "When I saw this newspaper, I was dead." Kaido told her all the changes in the content of the newspaper based on the facts after the newspaper was destroyed. Charlotte Linlin's pupils shrank. Dead still. It was so quiet that you could hear breathing. Charlotte Linlin did not respond, nor did Katakuri next to her. What do you mean? Charlotte Linlin had a bad feeling in her heart. She actually had a hunch, but she didn't want it to be true, which made her mood more irritable and a little bit more sense of crisis. Could Luo Wen not only control ghosts, but also predict the future? A sense of danger that has never been felt pervades my heart. From the creation of the Big Mom pirate group, to now sitting firmly in the position of 4 emperors, no one has ever made her feel this way. Even if I have been rubbing with Kaido for so many years, I haven't. We underestimated Luo Wen. The phone worm imitated Kaido with a solemn expression. Kaido looks reckless, but he is actually very shrewd. Those who can do 4 emperors are not stupid. Charlotte Linlin rarely sees him showing such an expression, but she has no time to pay attention now, because her expression is also solemn. Can control ghosts, have a ghost army, and even predict death. What else Luo Wen can't do? Could this be dangerous? Actually, I also encountered a haunt. Charlotte Linlin was silent for a while, dragging out her experience of being a ghost. Compared to Kaido's prediction of death, she felt that she was not bad. Kaido felt the same after listening. His expression was a bit distorted. Why did he receive a death notice, and Charlotte Linlin was just a painless ghost press? But even if it is a ghost press, Charlotte Linlin's mood is as solemn as him. Because they all remembered one thing. They just decided to help Morgan's deal with Luo Wen, when an accident occurred, and both sides encountered ghosts at the same time. Is it a coincidence? Or is Luo Wen's intelligence organization stronger than them? Have you learned that they are going to make a move? 1/2 chance, Charlotte Linlin dare not go. She has fully experienced Luo Wen's weird methods. Whether it was the foretold death or the ghost that quietly appeared on her bed, it was enough to make her take it seriously. Will you continue to deal with Luo Wen? Charlotte Linlin was silent for a while and asked. The hanged ghost over Morgan's. Otherwise, just think of a way to push it away. Anyway, it's just a hanged ghost, just find an excuse. The phone worm did not answer directly, but showed a pensive look. Thinking of this, Charlotte Linlin was upset and shouted with scarlet eyes, "Cake, I want to eat cake." Katakuri hurried to prepare. When he came back, he brought a huge cake, and his expression was a bit solemn. Charlotte Linlin glanced at him first, then reached out and grabbed the cake. The cake was huge, 2 stories high. She began to eat. The huge cake quickly bottomed out and was a mess. Hiccup. Charlotte Linlin burped full, and the sour smell of stomach acid came out of her mouth. Mom. Katakuri watched as she finished eating the cake, and then said, "I just heard the news that Whitebeard is dying." Charlotte Linlin's face calmed a little. She dropped the napkin in her hand. Go on. Katakuri nodded, and then said, "Whitebeard suffered a lot of serious injuries in Marin. In addition, he has been in poor health, and there is no possibility of recovery." 4.5 inches. The phone worm was still connected, so Kaido naturally heard it. Edward Newgate is a completely different person from them. Although he is also ranked as the 4 emperors, he doesn't seem to care about money rights. If it is said that Kaido and the Ant are headed by the ruler of the evil country, they use various means to continuously grow the country, draw power from the country, and deny its own pirate group. Newgate is a very traditional pirate. Most of the time he wanders on the sea and uses a boat as his home. But no matter how traditional, it costs money to raise a huge group of pirates. Newgate does not squeeze the civilians. There are many islands protected by him. After his death, these unmanaged islands have become pieces. Big fat. Thinking of this, Charlotte Linlin's eyes showed greed. Final chapter, end. Advertise here. After the top. The haunted age is set off by Rowan. After death, Whitebeard, with the help of Rowan, turned into an evil spirit and beheaded the betrayer Blackbeard. As for Kaido, he was entangled by idle ghosts from beginning to end and could not escape. Even Kaido called Auntie, hoping to use Auntie's soul fruit to control and solve the ghost that entangles him, and pay a big price for this. However, soul fruit is useless to ghosts at all. That time, in Wano country, Kaido and Auntie faced the real specter again. As a result, it ended in a tragic death. People all over the world are crazy. There are ghosts everywhere. People want to find the source of Rowan, but they are horrified to find that after the Dingshan War, Rowan actually didn't leave the old place of Marin Vando. He made the entire Marin Vando a central point of haunting. Countless people wanted to go to the haunted center to find Rowan, but in the end, everyone fell into the fog. In the surrounding waters of Marin Fando, a heavy fog covering the sky appeared inexplicably. Anyone caught in it will disappear. While Rowan disappeared, the haunting continued.